Hello, 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 beautiful people. Hope you're all doing well. We're just going to get started here in just a second. Just making sure that we got everything set up. Awesome. All right. Let's switch things on up. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Hope you're excited for some new portfolio reviews. Going to be looking at two people today. So, yeah, I'm excited. I was also thinking about the stream that we did on Wednesday, where people were asking me about my the thing that I was most excited about for like Summer's Game Fest, and how could I completely forget that like ArenaNet is freaking teasing us with potential Guild Wars 3 question mark? Not sure what it's gonna be. But I don't think I've I was this excited by just seeing like a single image as I've been for a long time. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they're gonna show off. There's a lot of speculation going around. I'd be curious to see if they go for Guild Wars 3. That feels like a bold move for a company who has been downsizing over time, right? And it feels like you need more people to do like bolder, ambitious, more things. So I'm not sure what that's gonna mean. But hey, I would love to be surprised though. Hello, Marius. Welcome, welcome. I love the new website. Yeah! For those you don't know, we updated our website. So if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description down below. But I am really happy with it. I've been working on it for a decent amount of time, really tinkering around with it. I love the way that it looks. And it also sets us up for the next thing, which is Beyond Academy. I'm really excited about that. We got our first couple of people already reaching out, and we are probably going to be doing some trials and testing in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it's going to be really cool. I'm really excited to get that all kicked off because that's going to be the next big thing for us. So I'm excited about that. But I'm glad you enjoy it, Marius. Thank you so much. But yeah, there's a lot more work to do. I think now that we have like a beautiful landing page on the website, we are going to reveal the landing page for the Academy in a couple of weeks once we have polished like some of the lessons and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll make like a proper big announcement, not only exclusive to the Discord, but also everywhere else as well. But I'm really excited to release that too, because that is also looking really cool. And then it's honestly just going to be like heads down and working on the content that is going to be in Beyond Academy. Honestly, that is probably going to be, that is going to be the focus for the foreseeable future. What I will be doing, since my contract work literally ended yesterday, it opens up a lot more time for me to look at opportunities and different things. There's a lot of things that I actually have somewhat in limbo or have worked on in the background over the past months, if not years in some cases. I basically want to structure them and release them to the community. This is basically a ton of new resources that we had planned or I have been building. And now I have more time to dedicate a significant portion of that to getting those things on the website as well. So I'm really excited about that. Oh my God. I'm so looking forward to like getting all the things that I have in my mind right now implemented on the website so that people get more information, more education, and become better environment artists. I'm excited. Not too much on the specifics of that yet, but yeah, there's going to be a lot to come there. Oh, I'm so excited. But yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really happy with the reception as well. So thank you all so much for going and checking it out. It's been awesome to have people praising us and also sharing some feedback as well, because that's also really appreciated too. Hello, Lily. Hello, Capitulo. Good to see you both. How are you both doing? But yeah, so today it's probably gonna be relatively chill, even though with all the chaotic stuff going on that I just mentioned, it is probably going to be like a relatively chill day for myself. Because around all the contract work, I'm probably going to take this day in the afternoon to kind of organize some stuff. I need to do some stuff in the house and all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, going to be focusing on that. And then over the weekend, I'm going to sit down with Sunny and get to work again. Pewdie saying, congrats on the new website, looking awesome. Thank you so much, Pewdie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad you like it. And Mountain Goat is also coming in saying, hello, Tim. Love the new website. Really cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. As you can tell, probably I should not be like rubbing my eyes as much, but hay fever is sort of coming in again. So yeah, if you see me going to the BRB screen, you know what's up. Helena joining from the lunch break. Hello, Helena. Good to see you here. Hope you're enjoying lunch. Healthy, energetic lunch, hopefully. I just had breakfast with my mom and dad, who came over and then picked up Nacho. So Nacho goes on his weekly trip to my mom and dad. In the beginning, he was super apprehensive and, you know, was really scared and all that kind of stuff. But it's really interesting that it kind of turned into like his weekly moment where he's like really excited, like, yay, get out of the house. Can do a bunch of fun stuff and probably get like, you know, too much treats and all that kind of stuff. But that's what they're there for, you know. So yeah, but I had a good breakfast, did some stuff in the house, and then now getting back into the swing of things. Pizza rolls. Hey, sometimes you just need to go for it, you know. I really, what's the word? What's the best way of describing what I did yesterday? I think I would describe it as pigging out, you know, that I just went to the shop and I just bought like a bunch of stuff that I wanted to eat right there, right then. Yeah, as a little bit of a celebration of the contract coming to an end, you know, successfully, all that kind of stuff. So I was just like, I want this, and I'm just gonna eat it all. I don't care if it makes sense. So yeah. So I literally had, this is gonna sound weird, but hey. I literally had mac and cheese from the shop and then also a steak. Just because I was like, those are the two things that I want. I'm gonna get them. I don't care. Let's go. I was just saying, hello, Tim. Love the new website. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I've been so busy these days. Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Me too. But yeah, I mean, you know, keeping busy is usually a good sign. So I'm glad you're keeping busy. That is good. But yeah, like I was saying in the beginning of the stream, I am also really excited to see, to watch Summer Game Fest in the evening. The main thing that I'm keeping an eye out, and this is something that I completely missed when we were talking about it Wednesday, was the announcement, or like the teaser, I would say, of potentially Guild Wars 3, potentially, you know? Yeah. Helena is saying, oh my god, I do this all the time. Mac and cheese with a steak sounds incredible, though. I mean, I didn't mix them, but I definitely had them one after the other, right? But I was just like, I want this, I want that. I don't care. Just buy it. Let's go. Sometimes you need to treat yourself, you know? Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what the teasing that ArenaNet has been doing, what it is panning out to be, because I'm not gonna lie, I reinstalled the first Guild Wars yesterday because I was like, oh, I want to get maybe I want to start like a new playthrough, you know, like start Guild Wars 1 completely from scratch and just like get back into it. I might just do that, honestly. Yeah, we'll see. We will see. I totally would mix them. Yeah, maybe that's something for the future, you know? It's step one, and then maybe step two is where I mix the both. But yeah, no. We talked about it a little bit on Wednesday as well. But who else is going to be watching Summer Game Fest this evening? And what are you excited about? Because like I said on Wednesday as well, I've got no clue what's coming up. So if you have anything that you're excited about, let me know. Because yeah, I'm okay. So let's dive into it, right? Like, would it make sense? Would it make sense for ArenaNet to even do Guild Wars 3? I have no idea if that would be like a good move, you know, to do an MMO in this current day and age. I don't know. That feels like such a risky move. Because what else could it be? Because let's say if it's not an MMO, what else could it be then, right? Like some people have been speculating that could be like a, I don't know, like a more arena brawler, you know? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So I'm like really cautiously optimistic that it might be Guild Wars 3. But I'm not sure if that would be like a good yeah, a good thing to do. I have no idea. Hello, McFowl. Good to see you. I loved I loved A Games. Hyped for the main event and the Xbox showcase. Hopefully the Naughty Dog game will be shown as well. Oh yeah, that's true. Interstellar, right? Or like not Interstellar, Intergalactic. That's the one. Yeah, I'm curious if they're gonna show something with that. But it also feels like Xbox has so much to show as well, right? Like such a stacked year for Xbox. But then there's already going to be a separate showcase for Gears of War, right? So that is probably not going to be shown, or like maybe like a small thing, but then hinting at like the bigger showcase. And that is probably the other game that I'm somewhat looking forward to because I've always been like a Gears of War kind of fan, you know? That was like my childhood kind of growing up with those games. But yeah, otherwise, I'm curious what is gonna be happening. Apparently the name for like the new Guild Wars thing is called Mistbound. That was like the internal name, apparently. And if you then think about like the Mists, right? Like the Mist is commonly associated with like PvP stuff. So yeah, does that mean that they're gonna do something more PvP focused? I mean, it could be like the Mist is like, yeah. I mean, you have Fractals of the Mist, which are like serious dungeons, but they're not going to be building a game around that, right? So I'm really curious. I don't know what they're going to do, because I want Guild Wars 3 to happen, right? But even when I say that, I don't know what that would look like, and if that would even be a good idea, you know? So I don't know how to feel about it. Like I'm hyped on the one side, but then also like if they're going to do it, then what would that look like? No idea. No idea. But yeah, I'm excited nonetheless. I love DA Games is saying I'm curious about it if they go open world with it. Is this in reference to Guild Wars? Because I mean, the second one went like, well, depending on what you mean with like open world, right? Because the only thing that would make it new is that they don't have like loading screens and there's no section, like sections, right? But that is actually the interesting thing with the Guild Wars games, I feel. Oh, Intergalactic, sorry. Yeah. But keep talking about like Guild Wars. That's actually one of the beautiful things that probably makes it so easy to keep online is the segmentation of the world, right? Delayed message, I think. Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to Intergalactic, I would not want it to be open world. How would that work in a space game, though? Because, so here's the thing with a space game, right? If you set something in space, I think the base expectation is completely different compared to like something that just plays on like, I don't know, like our world or Los Angeles or whatever, right? Like pick any location on our planet. Because I feel with like a space game, you always have this intention of like, oh, you can just go wherever you want to go, right? It's like space, the next frontier, like all that kind of stuff comes to mind. So yeah, if they want to do some open world stuff, right? And this I think is a good marriage of the two, is looking at something that like Metro Exodus did, where they have like the open world design language going on, but connected with more linear progression in between. And I think that the combination of the two works really well. But then that is only taking it from a design perspective, right? So how do you then implement that into a space game where, again, the expectations are different, right? They could format it similar to like The Last of Us, like sections of open world. Yeah, but even those sections felt, well, I'm going to take other people's word from it because I've only seen it, I've not played it, right? They felt like very, very limited, right? Compared to something where like Metro Exodus, for example, it kind of felt like, oh, it was like an open world map, but you would progress through it like sort of linearly, and then you would go to like the next open world map through a linear progression, right? But yeah, I'm curious what they're gonna do with it still. I'm gonna say like the initial trailer for it like just didn't really capture me at all. Right? So the only thing that they're leaning on now is that it is Naughty Dog. That is the only thing where I'm like, it is Naughty Dog's like new game, right? That is like the interesting thing. Didn't Neil Druckmann say Intergalactic is inspired by Elden Ring? My guess it's going to be Souls-like in open world. Well, but here's the thing, right? Like, inspired by can mean so much stuff that who knows, right? So who knows? Yeah. Because I don't want them to like stray too far from their roots, because they really are good at making like a really nice or like a really ambitious like linear game, right? And they do it really well, and they focus on like the personal stories, right? They focus on personal stories a lot, which is what they're really good at, right? And then straight away, let's say the extreme example where they would go to like an open world game all of a sudden with like systematic NPCs and all that kind of stuff, maybe with like a central storyline. Yeah, that is somewhat like way different, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what their spin on that formula would be, but I would rather see it more along the linear storytelling compared to like the open world storytelling, you know? But we'll see. Sorry, if you see me switching back, I'm just blowing my nose. I'm still here, I promise. But yeah, I'm curious. So, what are other people saying? Maybe they're doing a new Guild Wars 2 expansion? I don't think so, because those expansions have always just been released as like, oh, here's the next thing, you know? Ba-dam! That's it. It's almost like not a lot of fanfare, especially if you look at the last one. I didn't even know that there was a last one, and I'm sort of keeping up to date with that game. I completely missed like the 2 last expansions, honestly, just because it was so low fanfare with it, right? Whereas like with this thing, it seems like they're teasing the next big thing, right? So yeah, we'll see. McFall saying surely Half-Life 3, Left 4 Dead 3, and Portal 3 will all be announced. Yeah, all of them. Oh my god, can you imagine if that's your bingo card and all 3 get announced? When is the Xbox showcase going to be? I have no idea. What I also figured out yesterday is if you go to the Summer Games Fest, I didn't even notice that you just have like all the events on one page, which is actually pretty cool because this gives me like a better overview of what Summer Games Fest is supposed to be. So if we go to like the main website now, like you literally have like all the stuff that's happening in like one handy page, which is awesome. So Xbox Showcase is going to be the 7th of June. And I love this stuff because I haven't even heard about like most of this stuff, right? I would usually what I would watch is like maybe State of Play, maybe Summer Game Fest. I would then catch up on like Day of the Devs afterwards, but I had no clue that a lot of this stuff existed. I mean, PC Gaming Show, yeah, maybe, but I'm not gonna lie, it is so cringy. I honestly, I love to listen around for the announcements, but oh my god, I cannot listen to it full time. I need to have breaks. I need to have breaks. Oh, yeah. What was your thoughts on the God of War cube? It looks awesome. It was rendered really nicely. It was fun. I thought it was really well done. I think my main takeaway from the God of War game is just like, oh my god, the motion capture and like facial animations. I'm still blown away by like how good that looks and how expressive it looked. They did a really fantastic job with it. Let's see. I think Guild Wars 3, they have a massive chance to grab a huge chunk of the MMO players with stuff that has to be canceled and all that. I don't think so. This is the thing. When you're like an MMO player, the exact thing that you just said has been said for like the past 2 decades. I think a traditional MMO, as I grew up and fucking love, just doesn't exist. Like the industry now and the gaming landscape is just completely different. Because for us, for example, like an MMO was social first, right? Like I logged into like, let's say Tibia or RuneScape or all that kind of stuff to like most of the time, just like half of my time was spent just socializing with people and getting to know new people. And that was it. But that has been taken away by like social media networks, right? So there's less value in that aspect. And that's also why now you have games that they don't force you to contact people or reach out to people or go to, let's say, like the main city where everyone's forming parties. That doesn't exist anymore, right? You just look at a party, like a looking for group tool or like a party tool or whatever. You just press like, hi, I'm a tank. I wanna queue up for this dungeon, and then you get put into like a random collection with people. And I think there's a lot of magic in having to connect with people first, then talk to a first person who then joins your party, keep engaging with them and keep talking with them as you get to know them while looking for other team members to join your party. There was a lot of magic in that. But I also think that doesn't exist anymore. Like, those systems have been improved and have been streamlined so far that people think that is friction rather than that is like a good thing to add, right? So that's like the social aspect. And I think also what was so beautiful about like an MMO was the living world or like the live service updates, right? MMOs were the first ones who really started spearheading that kind of stuff. Like with Guild Wars 2, especially like the living world stuff, where you were playing the game and every week or like every month you would get like a new update that added like meaningful content and all that kind of stuff to it. That was awesome. I still remember some of the days where like you would log into Divinity's Reach, right? Which is like the capital city of like the humans, right? Like in Guild Wars 2. And there was always a district that was fully collapsed, right? And then all of a sudden, they started putting like scaffolding scaffolding around the place, and they started adding like tents and like NPCs around the place, and I was like, wait, what are they doing here? And it was like a minor note in the patches or something like that, right? Or like they said that like, oh, something is happening, but then you would have to go into the game and talk to the NPCs and literally try to figure out, as they were trying to figure out what the hell was happening, you know? And that was really cool. And every week they did like an update, or like every month they did an update. I can't remember the frequency of it, but you saw those changes happening live, and that is awesome. But that sort of stuff, that just a recurring update and the world feeling alive and like feeling like it's growing with you, that is literally a live service now, right? Fortnite arguably does this better with higher frequency and with just more pizzazz, or like more impressions, than Guild Wars ever did, right? Or like any MMO ever did, I would argue. So it kind of feels like, that's what I mean when like, let's say Guild Wars 3 is real, right? When they're gonna announce it, it makes me really question like, okay, what does an MMO these days look like even? Because I think you can make it work, but it's not going to look like an MMO that is traditionally associated with the word MMO that a lot of people have in their heads now. But yeah. A lot has been lost in the MMO genre socially. Yeah, but I think it's not lost. I think it's just, it got improved upon by like other games, and the industry itself changed, and the habits that we formed as people, you know? Like, yeah. Will be interesting to see Riot's MMO if it ever comes out. That's true. They're making one. They're making one as well, right? Well, are they still making that? Because they have a beautiful world set up. They have a beautiful world set up. So like the foundational world building has, I mean, they're still doing a lot of it for sure, but I would assume that a lot of it, they have like a solid foundation to start from already. So I'd be really curious to see their take on it, yeah. Because I think there's still something that has me clamoring for like the next game, you know, like the next MMO. Like I said before, I love MMOs, and oh my god, I've played like so many of them. And ever since then, like an MMO has always captured this feeling of like exploration and socializing with other people, and you know, it's really good at facilitating that. But yeah. Yeah, so I'm curious. I'm curious to see what they're going to be doing. Hello, MSRs. BE streams are my comfort place. Welcome to your comfort place. I Love DA Games is saying they reset development. I think they tried an MMO with the Trinity system. They reset it to go back to more traditional elements. Wait, what do you mean? The Trinity system is literally the most traditional element that there is, right? I think these days I think they're trying to oh, they went back to it. Yeah, got it. That is interesting because yeah, it does make it easy from like a design perspective, right? Tank, healer, DPS kind of setup. But I feel like there must be more to that, you know? Like more than the Trinity. But saying that, I think the reason why the Trinity works is because it's so easy for people to understand, right? And oftentimes it is not like the most ambitious, most complex system that is actually the best for most people. Because I would still argue that there's not a game that comes close to the build crafting of Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars 1 had fantastic build crafting. The way that they set up the skill system and the attribute system and every class and the multi-class system, right? They were one of the first MMOs that were doing that, where it's like it's not only a warrior, you can be like a warrior elementalist, and then you can get benefits from both of them, and you get access to all the skills, and you can combine your own things. So much cool stuff can be done with that. So much cool stuff can be done with that. And I loved it because it kind of felt like you were constantly trying to reinvent your character, you know? Whereas with more traditional systems, like the Trinity system, for example, it's not like you're reinventing what it means to be a warrior, right? Usually you're working towards like a very specific thing that you can do with a warrior, but there's only like, let's say, a handful of options that you can do. With Guild Wars, it was literally like you can do whatever, right? I mean, this is only going to be relevant to people who played the first Guild Wars. But like, just the idea that you could be like a ranger necro, and because the main attribute of like a ranger was that you pay less mana for like touch skills, and then using touch skills from like a necromancer, where you could steal someone's health, and using that in PvP and it actually working. That stuff is amazing. I was always so fascinated with that. And oh my god, the amount of times where I had so much fun experimenting with builds by just going into like a session of Fort Aspenwood and then trying to come up with builds that were designed to do specific things, right? Oh my god, so fun. So fun. This is actually like the most fun that I had in gaming for a long time, because I was also sharing it with like a bunch of friends, right? We would take like our PCs, we would just get to one room. This is like when I was working at like a Chinese restaurant, and my bosses would be playing too. So they would invite us to our place, to their place, and then we would just game until like 4 in the morning. Oh my god, it was so much fun. Yeah, but that is the thing. Like I think that is for me. That is for me the thing that someone sometimes get lost, and I realize the balance here is very difficult, right? But like what I mean is that you kind of want to have a balance between it should be easy to understand but hard to master, right? It's kind of like the Nintendo philosophy of all of it, right? And I think sometimes what we've done in current day gaming is we went a little bit too much towards like, oh, it should be easy to understand, and then forgot that it should be also hard to master, right? Yeah, and that's sometimes what I'm a little bit of sad about, you know? Because we're trying to make stuff easier because that is just to capture like a wider audience. Yeah. With the Trinity system, I always wanted them to evolve it into a more role-based system. So like a tank actually has to defend his party, and a mage actually has to spend time setting up the spells and protection, but probably hard. Yeah, I mean, I think that could be a good way of going about it, right? But the counter argument there, from their perspective, is probably that it's going to make it more hardcore, thus harder to get in, thus less people are going to be playing it, right? And I think that's what the Trinity system is actually just at its core like really good at, right? It's streamlining the system in such a way that it's super easy for people to onboard on it, and it's super easy for people to get in it and kind of get better at it over time. But there's not that sort of mastery that you have with like really trying to figure out like a new build by yourself in Guild Wars 1. Because yeah, that's what I was saying with the balance, right? Like, you need to have a system that is still capable of capturing like a bigger audience, because that increases like the sales of the game, which then increases the potential of you having to build out the world and the company and all that kind of stuff, right? But then you also want to have it engaging for like the more core audience that is focused on more technical and skill-based mastery, right? Yeah. I tried to get into WoW, but getting into the story has been difficult because it keeps pushing the latest stuff in my face. Yeah, honestly, like, so me and my partner played WoW like 2 years ago, let's say. I think it was, I don't know when it came out, but it was like when Dragonflight came out. We played Dragonflight, both maxed our level and did like a bunch of the open world content, did some dungeons, whatever, right? And it was pretty boring. It was pretty boring. Like, the most fun that I had was just like experimenting, like experiencing the world, and that was really fun, right? But I don't know what they're doing to like the new player system. I mean, they probably don't care too much about it, but onboarding new players into that game, first of all, is a real challenge. But also, they just keep shoving stuff in your face. And it is just trying to do this thing where it's trying to rush you towards the end so that you can then do like all the recurring things that you want to do, right? And once I realized that it was trying to do that, we just stopped playing and we actually went back to classic WoW. And even though it was like a slog, it was a grind, we both had like way more fun with classic. Because it actually felt like you were an adventurer and you were building up your legacy by like going to this place, doing this quest, and then going to like this new region. And not everything was about speed and oh my god, you need to get like more experience and rise the ranks quicker. It was more about like, hey, this is a world that you're a part of. And you are becoming a hero over time, but it's going to take time. And in the meantime, you just enjoy the stories that are around you, right? It is, and it's sort of that thing. That is also one of the things that we kind of lost with just like design philosophy, right? And there's arguments to be made that is just like it's a wider cultural thing, right? With the speed of social media and the internet and all that kind of stuff. And I can get it, but it still makes me sad that we lost that, right? Carlos is coming in. Yeah, but WoW was good. And this is interesting, right? So whenever WoW came out, a lot of my friends were playing it, but I was broke, so I never played it, right? So it was actually the first time that I played classic WoW was actually like 2 years ago. Like whenever Dragonflight came out, whenever we tried to play that, right? So I didn't even have the nostalgia goggles going on because I had never played it before. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm old. I feel like that feels like I'm getting more to that excuse, you know, where I have gone through the games where I have gone through the games where the games were they wouldn't just give you stuff. You had to work for stuff, you know? And doing that work, once you got the reward, it actually made you appreciate what you've done, right? Same thing with Forza, right? I love driving around in the game because the driving is very satisfying. But honestly, it is really hard for me to engage with the progression system because at a certain point, it is giving you so much cash and so many cars that you honestly don't even care about the cars. It is weird. And then I think back about my earlier days when it's like Gran Turismo, right? And you think that you have to start with a shitty car to then buy like a slightly better car and then to buy like a slightly better car. But there was mastery and there was you had to work for it a little bit, you know? The game was really fun because the driving was still like well balanced and all that kind of stuff. But you had to work for stuff, you know? You had to put in the time sometimes. So yeah. I guess I'm old and I miss old games. I just tried the level 20 free trial when I was younger. Oh, you're correct, McFall. I actually did play WoW when I was younger. And then my account got hacked. It got turned into like a Chinese gold seller. I got permabanned from WoW. And I think I'm actually still permabanned on my older account on WoW. Still am to this day. Just because it got turned into like a Chinese gold seller. And then once I got my account back, I just ended up with like a bunch of like loot that I had no clue what the hell it was. And then I think a week after that, my account was permanently banned or something like that, which is like interesting. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not playing that game, and I kind of just forgot about WoW. Hello, Kase, good to see you. Carlos is saying yes, it's an excuse I have. I'm 40 and I'm from the beginning, and maybe life changes for some, but the nostalgia of making your first character and doing the first quest and entering your major city for the first time, Yeah. Oh my god. Like, witnessing pre-searing Ascalon for the first time, not even knowing what the hell was going on. And then, you know, when the Char invade in like Guild Wars and they break down the wall and then you're teleported to like Ascalon City, but it's like burnt down and taken over and surrounded by Char all the time. And then making your way through Lion's Arch. Oh my god. Oh my god. So good. Ah, what was it? Like the mountain range, like the Shiver Peak Mountains, going through that range into the Maguma jungle. And this is the thing, I remember all those names, right? Because they really were a part of me at some point. I guess this is literally nostalgia speaking, you know. There's a rumor that they're working on like Classic Plus thing, so that might end up being good. Basically, old WoW with new content. Yeah, I'm so out of the loop with WoW. But yeah, I don't know what they're doing with it. But yeah, I mean, I think people clamoring for like Classic, right, and how popular it is, it's kind of showcasing that there is a market for those like more demanding games, you know? Because sure, maybe in the beginning you could chalk it up to like nostalgia, right? But then at a certain point that nostalgia is gonna wave off, and then you just end up with like a stable user base, right? But yeah, we'll see. I am again, I'm really curious what they're gonna show off tonight. I don't know where the have come from. I assume I forgot how to speak. Hey, dude, like you're listening to me. Like half of the time I don't even know what I'm talking about, you know? Or like how I'm supposed to say stuff. It's all good. I love the EA games is saying WoW was so hit and miss with the story. The new expansion was good and they ruined it again. For the new player, the story just isn't coherent at all. Yeah, I had a really difficult story to kind of figure out like what the hell the story even was that they were trying to say. Because here's the thing, and I don't know if everyone feels similar, feel free to say so. But I will play games these days. And at a certain point, my brain will just turn off and it will just turn into like an automatic kind of thing. And I think once I realize that that is happening, I know that I'm playing a game that is maybe not bad because it's not engaging, at least not engaging me, at least, right? But there's so many games that I play just because I guess I'm playing them, you know? Forza, it's the same thing for me. Like, I love driving around, but I don't feel like I'm purposely doing anything. I'm just doing a race after race and just driving around, but it's not like I'm I'm gripped with the story. It's just because I kind of like the racing and it's just the game that I have installed now, if you know what I mean. Where again, potentially nostalgia speaking, when I was playing MMOs, I could not wait to get home and learn more about the world and learn more about the story and learn more about like the mechanics and learn the new spell that I was trading up for or whatever, you know? Oh, or try like a new build in Guild Wars. Oh my god, so good. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Because you could also make the counter argument that let's say WoW doesn't exist, right? This is hard to imagine. But let's say WoW doesn't exist. Well, no, let's make it simpler. Let's say a new MMO comes up and they kind of take a lot of traditional elements and they have like an interesting world that you want to play in. Would people even care to play it? Because we're also surrounded by games that are more focused on just grabbing your attention and feeding you stuff that feels good without you having to necessarily work for it, right? So if a game then does that in this cultural moment that we're in right now, I feel like people just wouldn't engage with it. Yeah, which is probably why a lot of companies don't make it. Yeah. Food for thought, huh? But yeah, it's interesting. So I guess coming back all the way around, we'll have a look at the announcements tonight. I am really interested what they're going to be showing off. I'm still hoping for Guild Wars 3, and I'm really curious what they're going to show off, even if it is Guild Wars 3, you know? Emisard is saying, I feel like that's why most MMOs just die after a year or two. Well, which MMOs even came out? Like, let's say 2025. What MMO came out? Oh, Dune Awakening. Okay. Dune Awakening, Pax Day, and I guess what was the other one? The Amazon one. Can't remember. Chat, come on, you know what I'm talking about. The one that literally burned up a lot of people's GPUs. New World, that was the one. Yeah. New World was a while ago. Yeah. God, when was that? Okay. 2021. Oh my god. Okay, 5 years ago. Whoopsie. I was just wide of the mark like by 4 years, you know? It's a tiny mistake. But yeah. What was interesting, and I've never played New World, right? So you're gonna take my comments with a grain of salt, but it felt like it was more focused on just the mechanics rather than creating like an engaging world, right? And I think, sure, like gameplay, especially with an MMO, like gameplay can keep you going for a long time, but it feels like you need something more to also keep you there in between the things, right? In between like the interesting moments, you need some sort of engagement there. I played it a decent bit, but I can't remember any story from it. Okay, so for people that have played it, like, feel free to enlighten me. What did you like about it? Or maybe, yeah, what did you like about it, and what made you join in the first place? So MSR is saying, I played the beta for like 2 hours and never again. It was boring as fuck, and it was instantly grindy. Oh, okay. Yeah, another tricky thing to balance, right? Like, because you need some sort of a grind. But then if it's instantly grindy, you're probably just like shooting yourself in the foot because so many people are just going to be like, eh, don't care about it. Bye. And then McFall is saying, I can't remember any story from it. That is also the feeling that I had with just even looking from the outside with New World. I couldn't really feel the story, right? And I think interestingly, just to deviate a little bit, I would still say that like Arc Raiders does it better, but there was still some like sauce missing, especially in the beginning, where it was like an arena shooter, like an extraction shooter, but you felt a little bit of the story, what they were trying to do, but I was expecting more of it, you know? Because it felt like they did like the foundational work, and then they were like, okay, let's just make a game now, and then maybe we'll like integrate the story in it later on. Let's see, New World has cool combat, was very action driven, but it just didn't have direction from the get-go. And then by the time it got good last year, they canceled it. Dang it. Combat was pretty enjoyable at times. Yeah, it did look like it. It did look like it. Yeah, so it's interesting. It is interesting. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what other MMOs we're gonna get, you know? Well, by canceled, I mean shut down. Yeah, I mean, it was canceled or shut down, whatever you want to say, right? They literally just fired 99% of the people. They kept the people on that could to keep the servers running, and that was basically it. It's going to be interesting to see Warhorse Studios making a Lord of the Rings game. That is true. That is true. Yeah. Wondering if they will expand to 2 dev teams. That's a good question. Did they do like DLC for the first one? I think they did, right? Didn't they? I remember. Because I think what might happen in this case is that they'll probably move like a lot of development team onto the new Lord of the Rings game, and then have like a smaller team probably do DLC for like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Potentially, right? And then maybe they'll expand to 2 dev teams as well, yeah, over time. For New World, it was weird because the patch they had massive positive reception, but then they shut it down. Yeah, I think honestly what they look at is just, you know, average player numbers, like the amount of income that it's making, and then if it's worth even like keep running the servers, right? Yeah. So as much as it sucks, like a lot of it is just business driven, right? You can't make like a successful MMO if you don't have money coming in. Yeah. And we started saying Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 already got all the DLC it will have. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. They'll probably be working on 3 now in addition to the Lord of the Rings game. Okay, that makes more sense then. Yeah, probably 2 development teams then. Yeah, awesome. I wish them the best of luck. I mean, the Kingdom Come Deliverance games are really good. Even though I haven't played the second one yet, and there was some friction that got ironed out in the second one, I still really enjoyed the first one, honestly. Gabo, thank you for the question. Oh yeah, we are talking just about random games, right? But if you have any question about, you know, how to improve your career or how to do portfolios, or how to improve your portfolio, or maybe some career questions, feel free to ask me, right? We can talk about that stuff too. I love my glorious King Henry of Skalitz so much. I need to probably give it a try. It's weird, right? We just talked about like how to portfolio. Yeah, thanks, Lily. We will actually make. I'm actually willing to make a video on that as an exact topic. You know, how to portfolio, to kind of make a condensed video about it. But anyway, that's beside the point. It is actually interesting that the next thing that I'll say kind of goes counteractive to the conversation that I had and why I love MMO so much. I just don't have the time anymore, you know? That is probably also a big reason why like MMOs like don't really, they're not a big thing anymore. Because even for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, oh my god, how should I carve out time for that game, you know? Oh. It's almost like I need to have like a month off of something and then maybe play it. But yeah. Gabo, let's talk about your question. Do you think selling props on pages like TurboSquid, etc. is a nice business? It can be a nice business. It just depends on what content you make. Because here's the thing, you can't just make like ArtStation, you can't just make like portfolio projects and then just sell them on an online asset platform, right? That doesn't work. Because a person who is looking for a specific thing to buy, they want things to be functional. And when you're working as an environment artist on your portfolio, you're trying to make things pretty, right? Those two things, they need to go hand in hand. You need to make things that are pretty and functional, because pretty is good at selling things, and making things functional is really good at like attracting people to come to your product, right? However, the other big topic here is what marketplace would you go to? There is a new one popping up that I've seen like a couple of times. I think is it called like CG Lounge? CG Lounge, I think. I have not checked this out myself. But it looks like they have like a new marketplace going on where you get like 100% of the profit, which is pretty interesting. So I would honestly check out some of the newer platforms and see. No, not CG Foundry. CG Lounge. So let me share the link for all of you. This is the one that I'm talking about. I have seen this come up like a couple of times. They have a 0% fee, which sounds pretty interesting. I would probably explore like some of these newer platforms, and then also at the same time release content on Fab. That's the way that I would do it. But from what I hear from a lot of the people that are selling on Fab at the moment, it seems like it's a dumpster fire, and they need to really improve what they're doing and need to get they need to get rid of a lot of AI shit. So, yeah, I think it is a difficult place to be in as an asset seller right now, where if you put your stuff on Fab, you are probably highly likely at this point going to get drowned out by just like the amount of content that is flooding on there, right? So your best bet will be the long term when it comes to Fab. And then hopefully in the short term, you can make some money on a platform like the one that I just sent to you, right? But yeah, explore different marketplaces, and also don't go to the ones where you already feel like, ooh, prices are pretty low. For example, TurboSquid, right? Their payment structure is not that great. I think TurboSquid, if they still do it the same way, you have to be an accredited seller with a long history for you to get the maximum amount of that marketplace, because their rates start shit. And then you have to kind of build up your way to like the good rates by selling more content, basically, or having more content. I don't know how it works specifically. So I would avoid TurboSquid. I would avoid Fiverr for the same reasons, right? Because it feels like those pages are like a race to the bottom of the barrel. You don't want to be a part of those platforms, in my opinion. So this basically comes down to do market research, right? Try to see which market has better profit margins for you, and if the content aligns to what you want to do, right? Because the way that you need to think about it is that a person who is going to be building stuff in Unreal Engine is not going to go to TurboSquid, or is highly likely to not, well, it's highly unlikely that they'll go to TurboSquid to then buy an asset that they need to then manually set up in Unreal Engine, right? They're just going to go to Fab because it's integrated within the whole ecosystem, right? So think about what kind of clientele the platform that you're selling attracts. Because here's the thing, like selling things on the side, if it's good, if it's functional, and if you're doing a good job at marketing, can be really profitable. But it's not easy. It is not going to be an easy thing that you can just do on the side. You have to put in real time, real effort, real research, and then you can make it really profitable. But yeah, thank you for the question. Carlos is saying, oh yeah, I got invited to move my content to their store. Yeah, I think it's also with the closing down of, what was the other store? I can't remember now. Flip Normals. They were like a pretty good store for all this kind of stuff too. And here's the thing, like from my own experience, right? What I did when I started selling stuff online, I used like a bunch of different marketplaces. I was selling on Gumroad on my own accord. I was selling on QBrush. I was selling on Flip Normals. I was selling on ArtStation. You know, like all the pages. And then after 3 months, I would look at all the sales. And then I would just look at like, hey, this page made no sales, so I'm not going to upload anything else, you know? I'm just going to keep it there. It can keep doing its own thing. But yeah, you could even close it down, you know? But that's a good way of doing like your own research when it comes to things. Was thinking of doing maybe something for the marketplace to try it when I get 4 weeks off of work in a month, assuming my other project is actually finished. Yeah, you should try it. This is the thing. I'm not trying to scare you away, right? It's more you have to look at it as like a business professional rather than just being like, "Oh, I kind of want to give it a try." You know, like you can give it a try, but then do a little bit of research behind it. Like think about which platform, why that platform, and what you're going to be building and why people would buy it, right? We'll get to that question in a bit, Gabo. Can you make a quick explanation about the difference of making a portfolio for being contracted, or get the attention from recruiters to make your portfolio for showing off? Well, I mean, if you want a quick, there's not going to be a quick explanation. If you want to, you want to know the difference between making one for getting contracted or getting attention, because ideally, there's no difference, right? You should be grabbing the attention so that you can get contracted. They should be 100% aligned. Because if you're just making... So here's the difference, right? If you make a portfolio to get contracted, that means that you are doing industry relevant work. You're using the correct workflows. You're using the correct programs, all that kind of stuff. If you're just trying to get attention, highly likely your portfolio is just going to be like really quick scenes that look good in Blender and you don't care about like any workflows at all, right? That gets you a lot of attention because you can really, really get a lot of stuff out really quickly, right? But it's not going to get you a contract. The first two are the same logic. The difference is against showing off techniques. You always need to show off techniques. In the beginning, here's the thing, right? Like if the person, let's assume, and this is a hypothetical situation, right? Two people, one person is showing really good stuff, second person is showing really good stuff. If the other person shows a logic why they did the stuff and how, I'm going to hire them rather than a person that just makes pretty pictures. It's really simple. We talk about this stuff a lot during these portfolio reviews, right? A lot of the common feedback is honestly me saying, hey, you're missing breakdowns. Because I can see that you've made something pretty, but your portfolio should also be a showcase of how you made that, right? Because you can make something really pretty, but then really fuck up your UVs, make shitty textures, and then also don't know what you're doing with your topology. That means that I'm not going to be hiring you, right? But if a person then lays it all out and says like, hey, I can make a pretty picture, this is my topology, this is my textures, this is my wireframe, everything else, and everything is decent, I can then be like, okay, this person knows what they're doing, we're going to get them on board, you know? So that's the thing. Whenever you're making a portfolio, it should be with the idea to get contracted, right? You're not making things for attention, you're not making things for likes. It is a professional portfolio, and you should only focus on getting professionals' attention so that you can get contracted. Because if you make good work and it is professionally made, you are gonna get attention whether you want it or not. I can promise you that. Let's see. I love DA Games is saying, thinking about starting a new proper portfolio, study games at university, never even tried to make a portfolio or apply for jobs. Got put off by what I heard about crunch culture, but that was 8 years ago. Yeah. I mean, crunch culture heavily depends on which company you work for, right? Because I've worked in like 3 different companies now, and I've never had to crunch once. Never. There are certain companies where crunch culture is just the accepted way of working. There are also companies where they don't accept it at all, right? So I wouldn't let that scare you away, because I think in current day and age, crunch culture is so negative for like a company's publicity that they will not do it. Sometimes I don't know, this gets really tricky, right? Because sometimes for the deadline there will be overtime involved that doesn't necessarily equate to crunch culture, in my opinion. So I want to be very clear, I've never really had to do overtime or anything like that, and if I did all the way back in my first job, it was voluntary because I really wanted to put in some extra work. Oh no, I actually did that at Ubisoft too, but that was also voluntary because I was like, okay, I really want to polish this. And the whole team was like, yes, let's do it together. And then we just stayed later, we ordered pizza, and then we just worked an entire evening together on like a thing that we really wanted to push out there. And I think those are fantastic examples of how that stuff should work, right? Because crunch culture, the definition that I always go by is where it is weeks or months, sometimes years of forced work where everyone has to come in, has to deliver, has to stay like 10 hours a day, maybe in the weekends, like all that kind of stuff. That is crunch, right? The occasional overtime and all that kind of stuff, I can get it. I can get it. Because sometimes that comes to the territory, right? Because Cousin Slanish is saying crunch is bad planning. That's a thing that you'll hear a lot. And I would tend to agree with that. However, I'm going to give you a challenge. And this is a challenge that everyone can do, right? Because it's something really easy. This is really easy for people to understand, especially if you want to become an environment artist. I'll give you a concept, right? We can just pick any random concept. We'll just go to let's say we'll just go to here. Let's do, where's concept art. There we go. Cool. Random thing. How long does this take to make? Right? It's not an easy question, right? And this is with a very solidly planned out like concept art that looks like very defined, right? Half of the time we work with like stuff that is just like sketches, you know, very loose sketches. And that's also the other thing, right? Like we can, yeah, that is a good point, Lily. It definitely depends on like the team size, right? But here's the thing, even with that, right? Let's say you have a team of 10 people, right? It also depends on like the individual skill level with that team. And it also depends on like the tool set that you're using. And it also depends on like the gameplay ramifications, right? And it also depends on, you know, the new tech that you're building at the same time as well. Yeah, this shit is hard. So I think crunch equals bad planning. I think there is a certain element to that is true, but that's not the whole part of the story. Because sometimes everyone, literally everyone, can go in with the best intentions and can still miss the mark. Right? And that's the real point that I'm trying to make here, is that if you are trying to do something innovative with tech that probably in the beginning of the project doesn't even exist, trying to get an accurate estimation for your time is really difficult. Because if you look at like all the games that are coming out now, right? Or like are looking to come out like soon, most of them have gone through a delay. They don't do that on purpose. And I can guarantee you they're trying to do their best at planning, right? They have a whole team taking care of that. And they still miss the mark. That is because there's so much behind the scenes that need to happen to make it work, right? So yeah. I just wanted to drive that point home because oftentimes these issues that we see with the games industry, they're really complex and they have like a lot of different factors that come in. Even though your point of bad planning is definitely a factor in it, right? I don't want to take that away. But yeah. Let's see. I'm asking because I'm trying to help a friend and they asked me how I made it work and I don't really know for me. I thought I got lucky, but it's better to understand from the industry needs. Yeah. This is in relevance to the question that you had before about your portfolio, right? The main thing that you need to focus on is the more that you can align your portfolio to like what the industry currently needs, the more success you're gonna have. Mimacho is saying that depends on the person for sure. Yeah, and it depends on a lot of things, right? Because Beauty is saying a month to a year. I love DA Games is saying a month. I would look at this and I would be like, probably 2 months. And here's another thing, right? And this is a big change. When you're working on your own stuff by yourself, the speed of execution is going to be higher than it is working in the industry. Which is pretty weird, right? If you really think about it. Let's say you're a junior trying to get in. It's most likely going to be quicker for you to execute on your own accord without anyone talking to you than it is working in the games industry. The reason for that is because there is overhead in communication, right? You're a junior coming in, you'll have to have some training, there's specific tools, but you're also talking to a senior or a lead who's then going to help you and give you feedback on how to improve. And then they also have to talk to the art director to make sure that everything is like nicely aligned with the overall art direction of the game, right? So that's why sometimes what you'll hear is you'll do your initial estimation, right? So let's say DA Games is saying like a month. In the industry, it's very common to take that estimation from like an artist and then double it, at least. Because that gives us a little bit of buffer. First of all, for let's say you're inexperienced with skill, right? Especially coming from like an artist who doesn't have like a lot of experience yet, let's say, right? I'm assuming that this comes from like a junior perspective, right? To make it more interesting of an example. So they'll take that into account, then also take into like potential sickness as well. And then also like communication, right? Where you have to wait for your lead to be available for feedback, and that's going to block you for like a couple of hours, and it might happen like a couple of times a month. And, you know, like all that stuff is happening as well at the same time. And I think that's why, you know, if you then multiply the situation that I laid out for you here between 2 people, now think about this on a scale of like 500 to like 1,000 people. And you can really see how difficult it becomes to like anticipate what is going to happen, especially in the long term. Beauty is asking, oh, sorry, we'll get to a question in a bit. We need to do this chronologically, otherwise I'm going to forget about it. Let's see. Because Gabo is asking, what do you think about AI in games? It is something that can remove our jobs. This is a question that I get a lot. I don't think it can. I don't really want to go into like it too deeply, because this is a question that we get like every week, right? The only thing that I'll say is if there is ever an actor or a company who is trying to make you fearful of something happening, they have a vested interest of that happening and you believing so. But that doesn't mean that it is going to happen, right? OpenAI and all the other AI companies are going to make a lot of money if you are scared and that you adopt AI because otherwise you think that you're going to lose out, right? Look at it through that lens, and hopefully that's enough to kind of give you some insights. Let's see. Beauty, you were asking a good question. So a weird question. What is crunch though? Like, is it working 1 hour overtime a crunch? This is where it gets into like really difficult conversations, right? 1 hour of overtime is not crunch. That's just overtime, right? Where the barrier is between the two, that gets really difficult. Crunch is usually defined, in my definition for it would be, it's mandatory overtime where you don't have a say in whether or not you should or shouldn't do it, right? Sometimes there is overtime where they, and this is sort of like a gradient, right? Sometimes companies will be like, hey, we've got a deadline to make. If you can put in a lot of extra work, that is really appreciated. So what we'll do is we'll let you order food for free, right? If you don't want to do that, right? That's also your choice, right? but there is an incentive for you there to kind of stay and get free food and all that kind of stuff, right? That's one of the ways they incentivize it. The other one could be that like paid overtime is paid with like a little bit of extra, potentially. That could also be another way. I think the next layer up is where we get into like the mandatory stuff, right? Where if it's like, hey, we need to hit this deadline, the whole team needs to stay longer. That's when it becomes more and more forced. So that's where, if that happens on like a long sustained basis, that's when we go into like real crunch territory. Crunch is literally doing mandatory overtime, sometimes over the weekends, on public holidays, every day for like a long period of time. Yeah, sometimes even weeks or like months, just to get a deadline. That is crunch, where it goes on for such a long time that it's like it becomes a new norm, Yeah, it's a good question, and this is oftentimes the things that you'll hear. Everyone kind of has their own definition on it. There's no set definition. So yeah, and because sometimes people misconstrue crunch with having to do a little bit of overtime. And then sometimes there's also the opposite thing that happens where people will talk good about crunch because it just feels like, hey, we just need to get like the timeline done, right? Like we need to hit the milestone that we've set for ourselves. Because yeah, both of the things, yeah, it is weird. It is weird. And it's not an easy conversation because every company has their own definition on what is what, right? Yeah. But it is a good question. Here's another annoying thing that I'll say for all of you that are trying to get into the industry. You can ask a company about, hey, what is your policy on crunch? They can just lie to your face and then revert back to it as soon as you joined. Very cynical approach. But I've heard this story multiple times where people will talk about like, hey, what is your policy on crunch? And then they're like, well, we are like really anti-crunch, so we don't do it. But if we have to do it, then we'll get you like your free food and you get extra compensation potentially, So yeah. And then a couple months later, you might be working really hard, doing like lots of overtime or something like that. So it's honestly one of those like invisible things that you don't know what you're getting into as you're getting into it, which is part of the annoyance. This is why I hate trying to estimate how long a task is going to take me. Oh yeah, about like the planning thing. Yeah, it is something that's really difficult to do for a creative thing. 100%. I Love DA Games is asking, do you get given deadlines per asset then? So like, let's say I'm working on a large modular kit versus a couple of organic rocks. Does your lead give you deadlines on what to work on? Or you work on them as a team? No, usually you have like individual deadlines to hit. It kind of depends on the stage of the project, right? If you're working towards like a set deadline with like a set milestone that you're working towards, you will probably get like more specific deadlines, right? Where your boss will, or your lead or the art director or whoever you're talking to might talk to you and say like, hey, my estimation for this is a week, right? Let's say. And then you can probably argue a little bit back and forth, and then they'll adjust like the calculation maybe a little bit, but that's about it. I think in the beginning as a junior, once you get in, you probably don't have a lot to say in that argumentation, right? Because people with more experience are probably going to do more of the calculation for you. But as you get more involved into those conversations of actually trying to like accurately estimate your deadlines yourself, and you're going to get better at it, you can then have more sway on how long something's going to take. Out of the 8 games, AI is getting good, to be honest, but I think it'll speed up workflows, not get rid of jobs. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind with AI is just how expensive the tokens are going to get and will be getting in the future. Because if you think about it from like a purely video game perspective, right? I mean, even look at like the CEO of Rockstar Games, right? What he's saying about AI, I think he's very much on point with a lot of the stuff that he's saying. Go check out some of these interviews. But I don't think in the work that we do that I'm seeing a lot of improvements that are built by, that are meaningfully making use of AI. I've not seen it. I have not seen it myself. I think what I have seen or what I've noticed is concept art. You know, there's certain companies embracing like concept art and then doing like the first passes on them and then having like a concept art like change it, which is such a shame. Because that is the thing that really puts Anno 1800, Anno 1800, shout out to them, on the map, right? Because the beautiful loading screens, like the hand-painted loading screens. I've met some of the concept artists behind it. We went to visit and I saw them painting them live. Awesome stuff, you know? And then in the new loading screens with the new Anno, like they just did like AI and then like painted on top of it, which just fucking sucks. It doesn't, yeah. I don't know. It just, yeah, it's just weird. Like, such beautiful handcrafted stuff in like one game, and then they're like, they don't even realize the value that they have by replacing it then. One thing that would be nice is good AI UV maps. Yeah, there's no money in that though, right? That's the thing. That's also one thing with like AI, like they are gonna go after like the most profitable things or like the most time intensive things, right? Because that's where a lot of money is flowing into. That's why no one's building like an AI UV map editor, because no one fucking cares, you know? We care. Don't get me wrong. I care. I mean, maybe for the UV maps I'm doing, not, but like there wouldn't be like a lot of profit in it. That's why you see them going after like creativity in general, right? Because they want to make it seem like they're going to replace you, which then becomes like way more attractive for like a single-minded business guy to look at it and be like, wait, I look at my spreadsheet and the development team making a game, especially the art side, takes a lot of our money. So if we can have less of that, more AI for cheaper, my numbers are going to go up. I think that's a lot of it what boils down to. And then you're going to end up in like a lot of really interesting situations where you see this in tech all the time, right? Oh my God, there's so many examples where they boot like a bunch of people out and then have to rehire them because they realize that like, oh shit, like they actually had like really good skills that AI can't do, right? Yeah. There was a cool animation software called Cascadeur that was a good example for AI assisted animation. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I'm not sure from like a perspective of like animation software and how good that is and how valuable that is to the people working in it, because I'm not an animator, right? But I can tell you if like a 3D AI assisted modeling program exists, I don't think I would use it. Because here's the thing, right? Like, it will depend on what it does, but I get a lot of my satisfaction out of just modeling. And if the industry then decides like, hey, we don't really think that's where the value is in what you can contribute to a company, then I don't think like the company is aligned with where I want to be, right? Literally saying it's not always about speeding up workflows, right? So many people spend hours in cleanup and such. Yeah. I mean, that's also part of the workflow, right? Because it is weird. There's a lot of things that we can do that can be optimized, right? Can already be optimized. And you see this all the time, right? So for example, having to clean up like scan data, right? You can build Houdini tools that kind of do that for you, right? So it's not like we don't have the tools already to do that kind of stuff. It's just that we don't have the time or the need, in most cases, to make those or develop those specific tools that then can help us build that stuff, right? Because if you look at like a game development, right, like there's always a cost benefit analysis that gets made. Let's say we make a tool that can take all the scan data and clean it up for you and spit out like a nice little poly, right? Let's say that exists. That is way easier to sell than like, hey, I can save someone like 5% of their time because we can make like a good AI UV map editor. It's just not worth it, right? So that's where it kind of boils down to, right? Like, what part of the process is taking like up such an unnecessary time in the grand scheme of things that we can make the whole development cost like way cheaper? And that's where you can kind of see something like, I don't know, like concept art being like the first thing to go, right? Because it's, well, the first thing to go. I don't want to make it sound like it's going soon. I think that a lot of companies are just like overestimating the ability of it. And then also shooting themselves in the foot by then disregarding the ability of like an actual talented person to do the same thing, but with love. You know? Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. I had a producer who kept asking on how long the estimates would take, and let's say it didn't go down well for the project. I mean, you kind of need to have those conversations, right? And we have to do this. Like, it's normal for a person that's working on a thing, on a production, to get asked like, hey, do you have an estimate how long that takes you to make? Because that comes with the territory, right? Like, if let's say like a senior like myself, you come up to me and you ask me like, hey, how long do you think that's going to take you? And I have no idea. I'm really scared. Because now we're dealing with an unknown. Does that mean that you've never done this before? And if it's like a very relevant, like easy to do thing, like did we hire the wrong person for this position, potentially? Or is it something so novel that that this is like such a new thing that we haven't tried yet before, that we have no estimation, right? That's also fine. But yeah. All right. Yapping time is over. We are going to jump into some portfolio reviews. So let me switch on up. What's the difference between these two? There's no difference. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about portfolio reviews. I'm not going to go over all this. 4 categories that I look at: hireability, presentation, artistic ability, and technical ability. We're gonna go for these 4 categories. If you want to read this, feel free to pause the screen, have a read through them yourself. And if you want to submit your own portfolio, you can go to the website, become a member, and then sign up for a portfolio review. And then we add you to the list down here. There's still a bunch of duplicates that I need to take care of, so the list is not that long, but yeah. Let's have a look. So we're starting off with Jan. Jan is looking to land a junior/mid role as an environment artist. Let's see. Cool. Okay, I think we got some professional stuff going on here, which is cool to see. But let's start out with the general stuff first. So, a 3D texture artist and environment artist. Cool. Team Moist Maxing, let's go! You can't see the portfolio review page on the website anymore. Uh-oh! Did we make an issue there? Let me have a quick look on how to fix that, actually. Oh, actually, let me know that now. Let me fix that after the stream. Because with the launch of the website, we did change some of the permissions and all that kind of stuff, so it might have to do with that. But thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Let me...
WoW is handling things.
Stop. Okay, let's dive into things. So there's a little introduction here. Welcome to my page. Try to add something professional in here, right? Try to add something professional like, hey, I'm an environment artist who loves X and Y and Z. Something short, something snappy. That always works really well. We've got no additional social media content, which is okay. It's not that it's a must, but sometimes I like browsing through that stuff. And the only thing that I would say that I'm missing, and I know that this is like a limitation from like ArtStation themselves, is a CV, right? And that's where I could see the benefit of having like a LinkedIn page where you can then link your CV to just give me like an additional thing with that. Like an additional resource that I can basically, as a recruiter, I can come in, I can download it to my desktop, and then I can share it with like people inside of the company, right? Make it as easy as you can. Because now you are relying on a person to have like a link and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like really outdated, but sometimes you just want to have that like PDF like ready to go in whatever meeting you want to go to. Okay, let's dive into some of the work. We're going to start out with the old stuff. 2 years ago. Cool. So we got like the banner there with like the outreach to the email, which is good. Got the amount of tries there as well, which is nice. I would still love to see the UV layout and the textures and all that kind of stuff, right? I'm not going to spend too much time explaining that. I do that every time in these portfolio sessions, but that's what I want to see. I think the general breakdown of this is looking really nice in the way that you've laid it out. Really good start. But yeah, make sure that we can also see the textures and the breakdown of the UVs and all that kind of stuff too. This is old as well, so we're going to see if that has improved over time too. So let's keep going. This is a professional project, right? Road to Damnation. Is this a professional project? Yeah, Devil Inside Studio. Okay, cool. I love this. They just look so nice. Yeah, that's cool. Get some wireframes on there, right? Also, when it comes to professional work, try to hit them over the head with the full game, right? As much as you can, try to give them like, hey, this is what the full game looks like, because that gives me some additional context of what the game is, where the camera is going to be at all times, and, you know, because I don't know if this is going to be like an important thing that's going to be in the foreground or if it's going to be a thing in the background, right? I don't know. And giving that additional context to me, or like a recruiter in my position, is a good thing to do, because then I know what you're working with, right? Cool. The reason why I skip through some of these projects is because professional work, usually I can't really say too much on it because it is very limited in the way that you can present it, right? So that's why we're skipping through some of it more quickly. Hand-painted weapons. Okay. Cool. I like this. This is a nice collection of weapons. The order of things, I would probably change a little bit. Because now you're taking me from like awesome concept, which is like, okay, I see where you're coming from. Awesome concept. Awesome concept. It kind of goes into like, you're taking me on a roller coaster ride, right? Where I probably want you to hit me over the head with, this is all the cool stuff that I've made. And then these are all the concepts where I got them from, right? That's the sort of sequence that I'm kind of expecting. Because I think otherwise it might be likely that people will just look at some of this stuff and it feels really disorganized and then stop scrolling, right? I do like the way that you're starting to break down stuff here, which is looking really nice. I still want to see the full wireframe, and potentially, if you want to add like a little bit of a cherry on top, have it rotate or something, right? So that I can see the wireframe from like all angles. I think that could be good. And also, that would potentially be nice to show off some of the, yeah, like rotating the axe itself could really be nice to showcase the lighting around it too. Yeah, overall, let's see, 1,600 tries, which is pretty good. That's looking quite nice. I like that. And then we got the cleaver here as well. What could be an interesting take on something like this, these are weapons that could almost be used in, let's say, you could use them in like a World of Warcraft kind of game, right? But also, let's say like an old school like Warcraft game as well. It would almost be interesting to showcase like, hey, this would be my poly count if we are going with a first person approach. And then this would be a poly count for like a top down approach. And then maybe doing some, what would that look like? Maybe doing some mock-ups of like a game where you can say like, hey, this is a mock-up from like, I don't know, let's say League of Legends, right? Where you kind of like, you paint on top of like, you take this axe, you kind of pose it into the right sort of orientation and then just do a mock-up with like a character looking at it in the game. I think that stuff could be like really fun, you know, just to tell people like, hey, this is what it actually would look like in a game. Making it more presentable, right? Yeah, overall, like, pretty clean wireframe. Be careful with some of those like edges here, right? Like if you have like a curve that is like a nice and smooth curve. But that's like a minor nitpicky point. That's like a small fix as well. Because the rest of the curves are quite nice. I would say some elements here where you see like some of the jagged edges, I would probably add like a couple more edges there, you know? Because here's also another thing that I'm seeing, right? So if we zoom in and we go here, you're telling me with your wireframe, right? You're telling me this visually. No, not Epic Games again. Stop it. I want to get my pen. So with your topology here, what you're saying to me is that these edges are so important that you just had to bevel them, right? Whereas this edge that is way bigger, you're not even adding like a loop here to kind of make it more smooth. Weird prioritization of where the topology is going to be on your asset, right? And that potentially also hints to me that you have not done a bake, which would be weird. Maybe it's just purely hand painted, right? Which is also fine. Like I'm fine with that. But then it just comes down to a prioritization of the topology that you have done, right? Because basically your topology needs to be as consistent as possible to kind of say like, hey, if this whole curve has this many edges, then I'm not going to add that many edges here. And also like your distribution with your current edges could be done way better. I know we're diving into like topology deep dive, but get some consistency in your edges, right? So that every edge kind of has like the same sort of distance. And it kind of helps things feel a bit more rounded. I mean, looking at this, yeah, you could make that more rounded. Right? Yep, Lily is right. You can hand paint that bevel in the texture if it's unlit. I have seen crazy details on models where it was just like at extremely low poly count before. Yep. If you're looking for a person to follow like that on LinkedIn, for example, Jeff Parrott, I think he is the art director for Blizzard, I think. He shares a bunch of awesome examples. He shares this like a lot of the time. Let me pop on over to LinkedIn to share the link to his profile. Jeff Parrott. He is the art director at Blizzard Entertainment. Yes, he does an awesome job of sharing. I'll share it on screen now. But he does an awesome job about sharing some of these tutorials and what can be done with like very simple stuff. Yeah, I love the things that he's sharing. He's just really doing these like really simple things when it comes to hand painted textures. But yeah. There we go. For people that are interested in hand painted stuff, go check him out. But yeah, that's a good point. You don't even need to have that bevel. You can just paint it in. That's a great point. So cool. Yeah, so from like a portfolio presentation, I would hit me over the head with like the beautiful stuff first, right? You could almost make a collage with like the 4 swords as like a banner image, right? And kind of have like a color transition between all of it. You kind of do something really cool. This can all be done in post-processing, right? Like just slap it in Photoshop, have a couple of gradients in the background and see what you can be doing with that. Sell it to me. And then have all these breakdowns for the individual swords. And then maybe have one image where you just share all the concept art in one image, right? Because then you're telling to me like, again, you're trying to put the most impressive stuff in front of me first, then the breakdowns, and then where you come from, right? So small stuff like that, that optimization of how you structure your work can help a lot. Okay, a sheep gate. A sheep gate. Oh, I love this guy. This guy's cute. I love the very angular kind of sculpt that's going on here. The only thing that I can immediately tell is that there are some baking issues still, where I'm assuming that this is the wrong relationship between your UV seams and your sharp edges. Because whenever you have a soft surface, let's say the simple rule has always been close to 90 degrees, you have to make it a sharp edge, you have to make it a separate UV island. And that's gonna get rid of like some of these like weird things happening. Again, it's professional work, so it's probably too late to like make adjustments there, but just good to have that in the future. But yeah, cool stuff though. Cool stuff. Again, professional work, so probably can't be saying too much on this. Minor thing, try to get high resolution screenshots, right? Like blurry stuff usually doesn't look too good, so I don't know if you have access to it. If you make some renders, that would be awesome. Oh, what am I doing? Okay, so more professional work. Refire, cool. I think this stuff is cool, right? Where you see it in relation to what it is first. I would potentially, if you have the opportunity to, put that stuff first. Hit me over the head with the most impressive stuff, most game related first, and then go into what you've done for it, right? Same thing here, because you're starting with a logo, which is okay. But then this is probably like the more interesting stuff, right? Or even having like a small video that autoplays that shows this specific segment that you've done. Hit me with the most interesting stuff first, and then show me the breakdowns of stuff. It's like really nice. I like the texturing of this a lot. Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. Like the little sign that you made. Looks really nice. Probably limited here in what you can do, right? Because you're not showing off like wireframes and breakdowns and anything, but that's oftentimes a limitation of working with professional studios, right? So that's understandable. And then we have the statues here. Interesting. A tileable where all the stones end on the tile itself. I can already guarantee you that that is not going to work for like tiling perspectives. If we're dealing with like bigger surfaces, this would not work. So keep that in mind. Like whenever you have a, let's say this is a tiled floor, you want to shift the edges to kind of make the pattern less recognizable. Small thing, but it can help a lot. Okay, interesting. We kind of blasted through that really quickly because a lot of it is just professional work. And that probably hints at one thing that I want to see more of. Let me first look at the chronology, the chronology of like all these posts though. Because this is 2 years ago. Let me skip through some stuff here. 2 years, 2 years, 3 years, 7 months. Okay. 2 years, 2 months, and 2 months, and then 3 weeks. Okay, so we have to deal with the chronology. These two are going to be older, which you can tell. You can tell just by the asset quality and the texture quality itself compared to something like this, right? If we take this image here, and then we take this image here and we put them side by side, you can tell that you've learned a lot on getting like really nice textures on this thing compared to what we're seeing here, right? That's normal part of the process, right? Normal part of like personal development. That does mean that if you are, it's slightly different because it's professional work, right? So I would still keep it on here. But if you can tell that difference between your personal work, that means that it would be time to take this down. It's slightly different because it's personal, professional work. But yeah, something to keep in mind. I don't think I saw this one actually. Cool. Right. The thing that I was going to say, a lot of professional work, right? Professional work is nice, but professional work is not going to set you up for the future. Especially if you want to break out and go to the next company or secure your next contract, right? I think a professional work kind of gets you a check mark. But I do want to see more professional work, right? Just seeing more of what you can put in to the table. It doesn't have to be big stuff, right? I'm completely fine with you doing stuff like this scale, but show me where you can go with your own personal work in the future, because that is going to set you up for future work, right? And of course, it is nice to see the team challenges, right? Always love to see people join the team challenges, and having a team challenge is definitely going to do the same. It's almost like checking the same or like very similar boxes to what professional work does for you, right? It's showing that you can work with a team, you know, source control, you can follow art direction, like all those things. But again, within like the given timelines, it's really hard to get like an accurate representation of what the best of your skills can be, right? So that means that you still need to have a professional a personal project in here somewhere to then convince me, okay, that is really what you can do if I can give you control, right? You're saying, "Aw, Lily, what's happening? Did I say something bad?" But yeah, that's the thing, right? Like it's an uncomfortable thing in our industry, because that means that we still have to go out of our way and try to make something in our personal time, even when most of us are like probably tired from like working a day like in the office or on the contract work already, right? But you need to carve out that time to then secure your next opportunities. Yeah, so that would be like the main thing that I would say. And this is also a more difficult, this also brings up like a more difficult, how would I call it? Like a more difficult point for me to bring up or like to give critique on. Because with professional work, I try to stay away from giving a critique because you don't have control over the art direction and all that kind of stuff, right? So that basically means that I need to focus on, well, okay, the team challenge, perhaps, right? But let's be honest. I can only give you recommendations based on these things that I can see here. Because with the other ones, you're more restricted. And when I mean give you recommendations, like in terms of like how to improve your portfolio, right? Because with the other pieces, you're probably more restricted when it comes to what professionally you can do. So that means, yeah, breakdown here is good. Give me UVs, give me textures, all that kind of stuff. And then the same thing here. This is your oldest piece in your portfolio. It still holds up pretty well, actually. But yeah, I would think about the sequencing here, right? Think about the sequencing and think about like what you basically want to start with, like the most impressive stuff first, like really get them hooked in, then give them a breakdown and like your references, right? And then showcase more of the topology and maybe individual texture maps and all that kind of stuff as well. And also the size of the textures too. That could be good. So let's make a couple of notes here. One thing that I didn't say is that the overall quality on the portfolio is actually pretty good, right? I like what I'm seeing here. Even this from like 3 years ago still looks really, really good. And then let's say the thing that you did like 2 months ago, even though it's professional work, this stuff looks really, really nice. And this actually adds fuel to the fire where I want to see like what you can do when you have control of your own stuff, right? Yeah, that's the thing. So the thing that I took away from your portfolio is that the work is really well executed. Technically and artistically. And I think the consistency across the entire portfolio is actually pretty good as well. But there is in the back of my head, I have the feeling that you can do way more and way better already, but I'm just not seeing it, right? Because that's when it comes down to carving out your own time and making your own professional, personal project to kind of show me what you can do, right? So it kind of feels like you're holding back. Not like you're intentionally holding back, but you need to find a way to carve out time so that you can show me what you can do, right? And then for the couple of things that we had a look at, they were missing thorough breakdowns, right? Let's see. Thorough breakdowns with texture size breakdowns, texture sizes, full wireframes, and individual textures, right? What I would also love to see you tackle, a lot of it is prop work, right? And you call yourself an environment artist. I don't think you're currently an environment artist because most of the stuff that you do, I assume is individualized, right? And what an environment artist does is they focus on how to make things scalable. So that means using trim sheets and tilables and all the techniques that kind of come with it, right? That's also a thing. If I was to recommend you to look into something to make in the future, it would be, let's say, like a modular kit or something like that. Try to think about a story, build a modular kit around it, so that you can showcase off like, hey, I can do this really unique thing, which is going to be the focal point of the scene. And then I also have like, I don't know, like wooden scaffolding or something around it so that I can show off like the modularity and that you can make that too, right? So yeah, I want to see more environment art stuff. I also just noticed that this is like offset. That's like really triggering me now. Oh my god. So yeah, that's the main thing that I would focus on for the future. I would say, yeah, expand your horizon, right? Because I get why you're doing it, right? And this kind of goes into, let's say, your location, right? You are in Brazil. That comes with my assumption, right? I don't know the reality on the ground necessarily, but my assumption is going to be that you are probably going to get more outsourced work, which by definition means more individualized, easy to outsource work, right? Which is the stuff you're doing. That's awesome. But you're going to get to a point where if this is what you want to do, you can 100% go for it and you can keep doing what you're doing, right? But I would then target yourself more as like a 3D asset artist and really aim for like high quality stylized assets, right? Make that your thing and make really complex things. Because even the stuff that we're seeing here, none of it is really that complex. It is showing a good range, right? Because there's foliage, there's some architecture, there's buildings, there's weapons. I love that you got the range going on already. What I would say is that I want to see more complexity now. Like, if you have to make a small diorama with like a really complex thing that tells like a little bit of a story, right? That's what I would aim for now. Because you can basically choose, right? Like, if you want to climb the ladder, let's say in the current I don't know, contract, or I don't know if you have a job at the moment. Which would also be nice to add, by the way, because you have a bunch of professional work here that you're showing off, but you're not telling me that you work for companies. Add that on here. That is going to help a lot with getting hired. But what I was saying is, if you then want to climb the ladder in those companies and you want to get known to do like better outsource related stuff, then you can increase the complexity of individual props, or you can expand outwards more towards environment art stuff. Right? I think, I mean, I'm biased. I'm obviously going to say environment art stuff, right? So I'm just going to leave the choice to you. But those are like the two choices for like future career development that I want to see you build stuff for, right? So it can be either like using different techniques for environment art or making more complex individualized assets that look better, even better than the study you're doing now. Let's see, hireability. Hireability is pretty good because you have professional experience, so that's already pretty good. The quality of the assets that you have on display looks really, really nice. The old stuff where you show topology is kind of out of date, I feel, so I'm not going to put too much stock into only looking at topology and breakdowns there. But from what I can see here, it looks like it's nicely optimized. Especially where you see like some of the geometry. It looks like nice and soft, but I don't think it's too much going on. Too much topology. But I think it looks nice. So hireability is actually going to be pretty high. Your presentation it's good in the... It is good in the sense where you have, again, a lot of professional work, right? And it's showcasing really nice, and it adds like a lot of points to the table. And even the individual professional renders here. They look really nice. The thing that I'm not a fan of is the sequencing of the presentation, right? We talked about that before. So that's going to cost you some points. Let's say a 6. Artistic ability. Let's go with a 7 and let's have another look. Again, I like the stuff that you're doing here. Yeah, some really nice sculpting happening here. So I do like what is happening. I think where you're going to lose some points, if I'm going to be really critical, is that there is still some stuff like, let's say, the bus on here, which just doesn't hold up compared to your current work. Oh, this is an interesting one. Because I literally just said that we're going to keep it on here to add like professional work to the table, right? So how much stock would I put into this? Okay, I would suggest that maybe it's a point where we need to tackle this more in chronological order, because this work is old, right? But then it's right next to like newer work that looks way better. So I would honestly put this stuff lower down your portfolio and try to tackle it more from like a chronological order, because that's going to make more sense in terms of where I would put it on like how good it looks, right? So that's going to cost you some points. And then techniques, this is where you're going to probably lose the most points, because it was somewhat hard to tell. Because even for this one, you don't really share breakdowns or texture sizes or poly counts or anything like that. And then for these guys, these are like really old, right? So if I have to look at this, I like the breakdowns here, even though I said I would love to see like an individualized like wireframe, and that I don't agree with like the topology that you're doing here. So I have to go out on the assumption that you have learned from this lesson and that you don't do this stuff anymore, but I have no proof of that happening whatsoever, right? Because all the newer stuff doesn't show those breakdowns. So yeah, you gotta show me the proof, dude. Yeah, and if you can't do that with personal work, with professional work, you'll have to do it with personal work. So yeah, techniques are going to cost you some points, because I have to make a lot of assumptions. Yeah, so that would be an easy one to really increase your your viability for your portfolio in. I would also say that yeah, this rounds off to like a 6 in total, so not a bad score at all. I think you've done really well. There's some easy wins there. I would also say, looking at your location specifically, right? From what I know from like the Brazilian game scene, is that a lot of it seems to be outsourcing. So that means that if you want to break out of that world, you have to build a portfolio that is going to get you hired somewhere else, which then comes with the connotation that you'll have to move and all that kind of stuff too, right? I don't know if you're opposed to that or not, but that comes with a whole bunch of other questions. And for me, it comes down to, you need to build a portfolio for the job that you want, not for the job that you currently have. That's what that comes down to, right? Whether that is like making even more awesome high poly, like individual assets, or you do the opposite, where you go and focus more on like a broad environment artist skill set, right? Cool. Rio, thank you for the question. If you have any questions about all the stuff that I'm saying, feel free to ask them in the chat. That's why we're here. We're here to learn together, and I'm here to help you, right? So if you have any more questions, feel free to do so. But yeah, thank you, Jan, for sharing your portfolio. Let me share the link in the chat below. So go give him a follow, go give him a like. I'm curious to see what you're going to be building in the future, because like I said, like all the stuff that I can see here looks really nice. I'm a big fan of this plate. Like, it looks so good. Like the style of it, like how you rendered it and textured it, looks really, really nice. So great job on that. Cool. And then next up we have Senna just in a bit. Do environments get outsourced or only individual assets? So in general, in the general space of outsourcing, well, let's break it down, right? Usually you have outsourcing partners, you have co-development partners, and then you have like the main studio, right? Those are like the three different things that you can kind of see. Outsourcing in general is where you send anything that is easy to compartmentalize. So what I mean by that is that you can send a full environment if it is going to be like a separate game mode, for example, right? Because you can just set up a brief of like, oh, this environment needs to be this. Go ahead and get back to us with like the initial stages, all that kind of stuff, right? Or an individual asset. The reason why it's easier is because you can just let the team take control over the whole pipeline, and you don't need to be involved, right? That's why outsourcing individual assets is still very common, because that is literally just say like, hey, here's a reference image, this is our style, make this, these are some limitations, make it. Super easy. And then you just have to give like one round of feedback, maybe 2 rounds of feedback, depending on the studio that you work with. Super easy to outsource individual assets, right? When it comes to environments, you're talking about like, oh, now this environment needs to have a story, it needs to have level design, it needs to have like VFX, it needs to have all these different elements that kind of filter in to the environment, right? So it becomes trickier. That's usually why you have a co-development partner who then also gets access to all your tools, all your internal documentation, and all that kind of stuff. They usually take on the environment artwork. Yeah, I hope that clarifies it a bit. But yeah, like an individual asset is always going to be way easier to make compared to like a full environment. Gotta run. We'll catch the rest later. See you, MS Art. Good to have you here. Yes. Let me grab a bit of coffee. I'll be right back. What is this? We are book. Every time Tim says let's break it down, and doesn't start dropping dance moves, I'm immediately disappointed. Hey, how do you know that I'm not doing that? You gotta check out the Beyond Extend TikTok. Come on. Be right back. Immediately goes to find the BE TikTok. We do actually have a TikTok. I'm not even kidding about this. I made like a TikTok like ages ago, just to kind of reserve the name, and then we didn't do anything. Well, did we actually do anything with it? Oh no, I think we actually did post some of the Ivana's shorts on there, if I'm not mistaken. Oh my god, but that's ages ago though. But yeah. All right, we are back. Dance moves over here's how you environment artists like me. No, fucking TikTok dance moves. Day in the life of an environment artist. That would be my final day in the industry. You know that, right? Just like coming in, recording 360 view, just breaking all the NDAs, and then just being like, okay, that was it. That was fun. That was a fun TikTok video. Can you imagine if you do that? If you do that, and then you get like, I don't know, 100 views, and you don't have a job. Putting it all on the line, going all in on like TikTok. There must be some people. There must be some people that do that. But you got 100 views. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true, McFall. I was focusing on the wrong thing. You're right. And here's where we keep all those studio money. What? Is it just going to be like a picture wall of like all the CEOs of all the big companies? That's where we keep all the money. Oh, is that too spicy of a take? Sorry, guys. Got the big bucks. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it is always interesting. I mean, we run like a, I would say, in my opinion, like a semi-successful like educational like YouTube, right? But I can tell you from like the YouTube income that we get, it is, yeah, it's not worth it. Just doing that, right? If your whole plan was to make, if your whole plan was to make like YouTube video content, you better be hoping that it's bringing in like 100,000 to like million views, like on the regular. I think, because otherwise it feels like it's not scalable. It's just not worth it. Yeah, not that I'm complaining. I am really happy with the reach that we have, like, and I'm happy to more clickbait thumbnails. No. We're not gonna be doing that. We are gonna revamp our thumbnails, but it's not gonna be clickbait stuff. I don't like it. Like, honestly, most of my home screen of YouTube, my personal account, it is literally just filled with like, you wouldn't believe what happened. I can't believe they did this, or this one trick changed my life, or oh my god. Sure, and it is nice if I'm like late in the evening, I'll just click on like a couple of random videos. And then it's literally just like, okay, turn brain off kind of moment, right? I do not want Beyond Extent to be like a thing that you just have on the side, and it's just like, oh, that was cool, like mindless content. Thank you for that. That's not our point. That's not what I want to make. I want to help people build a career, you know? Oh, to be fair, like, I watched a lot of random video essays as well. Like, I watch a lot of economic stuff. Don't know why, but I love like economic like essays and like deep dives into like, I don't know, what the hell is happening with the economy, right? Or like economic trends, or why certain things do certain things. I don't know, something really, really interesting. It's game dev on my end. Yeah, I don't tend to watch a lot of game dev stuff. So if you can recommend, shout out some stuff that you watched, like Route 1. I mean, I do have a couple of recommendations myself. So The Fourth Curtain is actually like a pretty good podcast. I actually love that podcast. I think the games business one with Christopher Dring is also really good. I love listening to that one. But I think those two are probably going to be like the most common ones that I kind of listen to, honestly. And then maybe occasionally, like I'll watch Sex Kill Up, you know. But that's again, it's more of those. It's one of those things where like we'll put it on, and then it's just like during dinner, like we'll just see what's happening, right? I can't believe this artist has this on their portfolio. Oh my god! I don't like it. How to make your money work for you? No. I'm literally talking about like the boring financial stuff, right? Like what is happening, like what is changing with like the rules when it comes to like world ETFs, right? And what is happening with like the new IPO from like SpaceX and how that's going to change like the rules around like ETFs. That sort of stuff, right? And it's about like a former like investment banker that is talking about like, oh, here's like if we dive into like the changes of the rules, like according to this blog post, that's gonna change, right? That's sort of like really boring like stuff, like into the weeds. I don't know. I don't know why I like to watch it. I screenshotted that. That will be 10 euro for this. Wait, okay, 10 euros for this video's thumbnail. Do I still need to draw the red circles myself, or are you gonna do that? I'm just trying to get value for money here, buddy. Come on. Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for like new stuff, honestly. Anyway, let's dive into the second portfolio for today. As a reminder, if you have any questions while we're talking about the portfolio, feel free to ask a question. We can talk about it. So next portfolio on the list is Senne van Houten, coming from DAE, my former stomping grounds. Love it to see. My main goal is to become an environment artist and work on AAA titles. Though with how the industry is swinging these days, I'm happy with any environment art position. You're writing like me, dude. Come on, don't get my disease. My disease of like trying to speed type everything and then making like 1,000 mistakes. But I am happy with any environment art position that helps me push as an artist. Yeah. Well, this is also, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because for my first job, I started at Frontier Developments. Frontier Developments was not my ideal company, right? And I don't mind saying that because I think it like really pleasantly surprised me about what it did do really well. And I was really grateful. I'm really grateful for the people that worked there and still work there. It is a really good company, and it was like really nice to grow with them as well. And I think that gave me like a different perspective of how it is growing with a company rather than joining an already established company. Because if I have to contrast that with, let's say, my time at Playground Games, and I'll talk about Ubisoft as well, but Ubisoft was like a really, really weird in-between one. But if we have to talk about like my time at Playground Games, like everything is established, right? You go into a system that has worked for the longest time in the way that it does right now, and there's arguably not a lot that changes within that system because it has proven to put out like really good results, right? That means that there's also less changing of the rules or less flexibility when it comes to the rules, just in general, right? And that comes with pros and cons, right? It's more stable, but it's also less flexible for you to then grow as an individual within that studio, right? Because everything is so set in stone already. Whereas what I've always liked with a new studio is that you kind of join on the ground floor. You go through like all the chaos. Well, maybe not a new studio, but like a smaller studio. And if they then grow, you get to grow with them, and you become like a more integral part of the studio. Because you oftentimes join when they were smaller, and now they have like way more people, but you joined before all of them, and that gives you a different way of thinking, a different way of applying your skills to that company, right? That's kind of what leads me to when I was working at Ubisoft. That was like a really interesting thing, because one of the reasons why I wanted to join was because it was a new studio inside of a massive studio, right? Or like a massive conglomerate, let's say. And I think we got the best of both worlds. You've got, from like a studio perspective, you get like a framework and a rule set of just like, hey, this is what it means to work within Ubisoft as a studio. But the studio itself was still free enough to kind of shape its own kind of way of thinking and its own kind of workflows, right? And I think that's also why, from what I know and from what I've heard, is that they're still regarded as being like just really forward thinking, really ambitious, just because that was in our identity from the beginning. And we're still, well, I say we, but like Ubisoft Berlin is still like new when it comes to like all the studios within Ubisoft, right? And they offer something different. So yeah, this is all to say, I just wanted to give you some perspective that even though you think that a company might not offer you like all the things that you want, sometimes you might be surprised that they can actually give you, that they actually have to offer more than you might have ever expected. It's because that was the case with Frontier. The camaraderie out of people at Frontier, that is probably still there. The community aspect, especially from the games that they make and how tight-knit they are with the community, that is something that I've not really seen within all the other studios that I worked in, really. Like, it almost felt like, you know, if you work on like bigger games, you need to have some sort of separation between yourself and the community, right? But that separation, that kind of felt missing when I was working at Frontier Development. Like, yeah, it was very, very much like we would go on Reddit and we would take in like, oh, this person actually has like some pretty wild ideas, and then there were moments where we would watch people build crazy stuff on the Reddit and then invite them, like not me, but like invite them on the live stream to then showcase their stuff on stream, and stuff like that was so interesting to see, and that sometimes feels like it's still missing from like a lot of other studios, you know. Is Ubisoft Berlin a studio that helps with a different studio, or are they more independent projects? No, I think it's fairly rare, and I'll talk only about my time that I was there, right? We were doing co-development for Far Cry, and we were also doing some... Oh my god, what is going on? And there were also some other teams that were doing smaller mandates for other projects within the Ubisoft umbrella, right? So we were definitely doing more of like what you can consider co-development, right? So they would give us a mandate from, let's say, Far Cry. For us, that was we needed to deliver expedition maps, right? I don't know the exact mandate, but in the end, we ended up with making like 6 maps that were completely developed by us in the same style and with the resource that we got handed from Ubisoft Toronto at that stage, right? So we were kind of free to do what we wanted within that bubble, and then occasionally we would get like feedback from the main studio, right? So yeah, because I think if you want to look at a studio that has been on a very long trajectory of making their own independent project, it is Ubisoft Singapore, right? Skull and Bones was their first project. And no matter what you want to say about like the project itself, just from like a company structure, it takes a lot of time and effort to develop the skills and the team to be able to build that as an independent studio, well, sort of independent project within Ubisoft, right? Because it's not like they can just give like a team like a bunch of money and then it's just like, yeah, do whatever you want, right? That's not how it works. You kind of need to be able to prove within Ubisoft that you are that you have something. I would assume, I don't know this, but I would assume that you as a studio have to pitch a project towards like the HQ, right? Like in Paris, where like all the big chiefs are. So you basically have to pitch as a studio your project and then showcase that you have delivered consistently over the, I don't know, past period of time, right? Don't Massive also work like fairly independent? Yeah, but that's because they got bought up, right? So with a lot of studios, and this is really difficult to track, and I don't know what the legacy of like, let's say, Singapore studio is. I don't know if that was like a new thing that they started or like a studio that they bought up. I honestly have no idea. But with Massive, for example, that was a studio that got bought out by Ubisoft. And then I'm assuming, again, I have no idea, they probably have it in their contract some sort of way that they can retain their independency as long as they deliver X, Y, and Z, right? There must be some sort of regulation there. Because I would, and I've always said this even when I was at Ubisoft, like they are the flag bearer of a lot of Ubisoft's newer IP, right? You obviously have like the legacy studios, but I call them legacy, like the older studios like Ubisoft Toronto and what's the other studio? Toronto, Montreal is like a big one as well. So you still have those like other studios that are doing and have done their own IP. But for Massive, I think it's slightly different because they get like all the newer IPs, right? Like the new stuff, Avatar, and The Division, and yeah, all those games, like they put them on the map, right? I mean, they put Ubisoft on the map, but it was all Massive that made it. So that's where, if you deliver something like that, I would, if I was Ubisoft, I would also be like, oh my god, they seem to be doing some good shit. Okay, let's let's have a look at investing more money into that studio, but let's be fairly hands-on because it seems like they're doing some good shit over there. You know, like 2 Avatar games, like what is it, like 2 Division games? Well, a lot of Division games. I can't even keep track of how many, but yeah, they're doing good shit, right? They're doing good shit. And that's the thing, right? Like, if you do good stuff, I think in my opinion, if I then look at it from like an organizational perspective, it's like, okay, we're gonna attach some like goalposts to this, right? And if you manage to hit them, you get more independence, right? Still a part of Ubisoft for sure, but we're not going to be as heavily involved within like the creative structure and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Going back to the point, because I was just making a point here for you, Senna, that even though it was long, that sometimes, yeah, you might be surprised like where you land, you know? Let's swing it back to your portfolio. So yeah, let's have a look here. Second year student at DIA, striving to learn as much as possible from as many as possible. Awesome. Cool little tagline. About page, pretty straightforward. It's interesting. I would say fill out your skills, but I don't think I've ever looked at those skills like on your ArtStation specifically. However, you're not building this for me, right? Like if I would still fully add like all the stuff that you can do to like this profile to kind of be as close of an approximation to what you can bring to the table as possible. Yeah. Let's have a look at the LinkedIn. Community vote winners, let's go. Aspiring environment artist, focusing on tackling bigger and bolder challenges drag me out of my comfort zone. I consider myself a happy wanderer of those creative highlands and urge to absorb as much as possible from it. Okay. Okay. Pretty high and mighty over there. Seeing such great art being produced every day fuels me to become a valuable team player in the organism that creates these. Okay, this feels very wishy-washy, you know? I don't know if you wrote this yourself, but it kind of reads like very high and mighty AI kind of stuff, you know? I don't know if I'm just like very picky with this now, but yeah. I've always been inspired and drawn to games. It was, however, during my academic studies as an economics major, I realized that it was the art and the creating that gravitated me towards it so much. It's been a wonderful journey getting to learn and create myself. What a life. What a life. I do like this though. Like genuinely, like this is cool. I've always been inspired and then just sprinkling in like, hey, this is why I switched, blah, blah, blah. I think that's cool. This sentence, you can probably honestly like copy and paste this over this sentence. And I think that'll be good. Like a condensed kind of format, right? One thing that I'll say is go into your profile settings and have like a featured section. Have your CV, have this thing in there, you know, community vote winners. I think that's always looking really good. But have a little section where you want to show off like some of the recent stuff you're doing, right? Because you seem to be like fairly active on social media. So that could be like a good thing to then kind of use, right? Cool, cool, cool. Interesting. What's that on here? Ah, interesting. So that's no longer on your portfolio. I wonder why. Interesting. Cool. So yeah, have your CV on your LinkedIn page. That's definitely going to help. And let's dive into some of the work. The Watcher. So I think this is like your first modularity class, right? I think. I'm trying to think back at like the studies. That's cool. I like the little animations going on. Yeah, the focus here is more on modularity, right? I would say it's decent, right? But it is definitely lacking like some sort of intrigue. I think some of the scale oftentimes goes lost and the logic of the place, right? For example, if you have like a door here, then you would surely assume that people are going to get onto this walkway and all that kind of stuff, right? It kind of feels like this place needs to be grounded in what it is because you're almost trying to combine civilian architecture with a demonic gate. It kind of feels like those are two separate areas, you know? I don't want to open my front door to see like a massive Eye of Sauron just watching me in the corner. Yeah, I like even the breakdowns already. Yeah, let's see. Posted last year. This is very early on in your career, right? Like your DIA career. So let's have a look. This is 3 weeks ago. I'm kind of curious to go in more chronological order. So these are like from last year, right? So let's start here. Okay, what is this saying? Project is my first real-time playable level, focusing on learning how to implement my own assets into Megascan. How to implement my own assets into Megascans? What does that mean? Because Megascans are their own assets, right? So I'm not sure if that's like... It's a bit confusing. Optimization techniques and using given technical restrictions such as max 5k tries, 2k texture sizes per asset to create an optimized scene. Although this assignment was a rather challenging one, I enjoyed every minute of making this level, and I'm stoked to be diving into my next challenge. Okay, cool. What I would also say is these technical challenges and all the stuff that you write in here, it is good, but it is highly unlikely that anyone is going to read it. You need to be able to visualize this stuff, right? So let's say if you use like a lot of Megascans assets, show me what is Megascans and show me what is not Megascans, right? Show me what you've built yourself, because right now, let's actually have a proper look at this, right?
You got your technical breakdown, you've got all the lights. A modular shrine. Got your trim texture. Moss material. Little asset. Okay, so with this, I just have to assume that anything that is not in these pictures is just going to be mega scans, right? So all the trees, all the grass, all the rocks, all the statues, that's all just going to be... That is all just going to be mega scans. So if I then have to look at, let's say, this over here, you've basically done this. Let's see. We didn't even see that broken down, right? Okay. So I can only assume, or safely assume, that you've done this, right? The main thing here, I'm not even seeing like the filler assets, probably this guy, right? And then the moss material, right? So like some of the moss you've made yourself. But that means when we look at this image, like there's a lot of stuff that is not made by yourself, right? And whether that just means that either it is, but it's not shown somewhere, or it is not, and the counterpoint is also not shown, right? So whenever you want to showcase like, hey, this is what I've made, have an image with like, this is all the stuff that I made, and have like another image that says like, this is all the stuff that I didn't create myself, right? Try to make it as clear as possible. Because otherwise, you're going to run into an issue where I'm going to assume that, like, there's only a couple of things in here that you made yourself. Where there might actually be way more that you've made yourself, but you're just not showing it to me, right? Which is an issue, right? Because there might be way more value to this environment than you're currently showing to me, right? So we need to make sure that that is properly aligned. When it comes to the breakdown, I think the breakdowns are decent. So we are seeing a wireframe. It is sort of hard to tell the wireframe at a distance, right? Because I don't know if that is a bevel or if that is something else going on. I'm assuming it's a bevel. But yeah, try to give me like a clear view of whatever you're showing, right? Small thing here, but it can definitely make a lot of difference. The modular shrine next to it is looking good. Then we have the texture breakdown as well. I know that you don't want to show off like UVs because it's literally just going to be like fucking mental crazy down over here, right? What this is also showing me, and this is more of a side note, this is also showcasing that you're not using the correct workflows yet for these buildings. And also, that you've been somewhat lazy because the top of the roof is not even finished modeling. Interesting. What I mean with the wrong workflows is that you can see that this is just like a very low poly model with no sort of baking, no sort of trim sheets, nothing like that. It is just like a tileable texture slapped on top of it. And there's no additional way that you're trying to add additional details into it, right? For example, when we do this technique, oftentimes what we then use is the mid-poly workflow, which just means that you have your low-poly asset with a single bevel, and then you add weighted normals to kind of add a bevel where you don't have a bevel that is baked down, right? But that means that this is not currently correct to what you would be doing in the industry, right? So either you have a single bevel with like weighted normals, and then you try to make it more procedurally textured, which is probably what you're trying to do. Well, no, even not that, because you have your moss literally baked into your texture. So that would be another thing. When we're doing this layering, it is oftentimes better, instead of doing like one trim texture, to have your base wood, your bare wood without any paint on it, then your moss, and whatever layers you want to add on top of it, and then blend them in like a master material that kind of blends them together, right? The reason for that is because that whole system is way more scalable. Because now you have your moss already made, right? I can just literally use this moss to tile it on top of this, and then I can save myself like literally a fourth of your texture here. Anyway, we're not going to go dive into like the artistic stuff too much. We're going to focus on the bigger picture, right? I do like your multiple scene renders, like different lighting scenarios, which are pretty cool. There is potentially also the opportunity to do something really cool with the transition of those scenes, right? Yeah. And also be very crude with like with this image, for example. Needs a lot of work to make it way more interesting. I think that you're trying to do something cool here, but it's just not working at this point yet. And compared to this image, this is way more polished than this image, right? Which means two things. Well, you have a choice basically, right? Either put in more work and more time. If you don't have that, probably cut it. Super simple, but yeah, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions because again, you wanna showcase your best work in your portfolio, right? So, yeah, try to push that best work forward. Let's see. Let's have a look at this then, and then we'll have a look at the team challenge. Modular kit. Okay, you're thinking about the presentation. I like where this is going. Do like where that is going. Watch out with placeholder textures, you know, or broken textures. Watch out for that. Yeah, but I do like what you're doing. I don't think it's 100% effective yet at showcasing like the little images, right? Like the little breakdown. I think what could be more interesting is, let's say you spend like 40% and you just have like your little view here, right? And then you have like an overlay, let's say pink for this thing. So that's going to be, I don't know, let's say this is going to have like a pink square, and then that is going to be this, right? And then you can do the same thing with like different colors. And then you just add like an overpaint, you know? And then you can make it like more subtle by like having opacity, like still influence it and all that kind of stuff. But then I can really clearly see like, okay, color matches like this thing. Just as an idea. Root generator based on the spline. That's cool. Showcasing some technical stuff. I would love to see, because now you're showing Blender stuff, right? Which is awesome. Take me through the pipeline though. Like showcase, okay, you've made this tool. Now do like a quick export, showcase what that looks like in the scene, and then showcase it with like all the additional set dressing and all that kind of stuff on top of it, right? Make it, it's almost like whenever you show a tool, think about it as like you're doing a product demo, where you're trying to convince me to buy this thing, right? Yeah, really cool stuff. I think it's also a great choice to pick for like a concept, right? Because there's a lot of reuse within the structural elements. And then if you make like that one root spline, which you did, you kind of have like a lot of it figured out, right? So I think that's a great pick for the concept. Of course, I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but I think you picked a great concept to then execute on with your skills, which is really good. Really well done. Your breakdown is a bit basic, right? Like I love the stuff that's going on here. We already talked about these images, but what I also want to see is, you know, how did you use your textures? How did you implement like smarter ways of reusing more with your textures? Or maybe there's some interesting things that you've done with like reuse of the sculpts or whatever you've done, right? Showcase me that you can use your clever thinking with the tools also applies to the way that you made your modules, right? Did you use a trim sheet? If so, how? How did you apply it? What did you struggle with, and how did you try to overcome those little bits, right? Because yeah, I think this is something that I I'm going to comment on at the end as well, but that's going to come back at the end. But I think the overall picture, beautiful, right? But then if I start to look at like the individual elements, it becomes a little bit lackluster, right? So I want to see like more individual detail that convinces me that you can not only do like the big picture, but also the small picture stuff too. And I think the roots are a good example of that, right? If you show the whole pipeline and then adding like all the moss and the overgrowth and the hanging leaves and all that kind of stuff to it, I think that has a lot of potential. But yeah, showcase that on the individual architectural elements too, right? Because for example, an easy thing to spot here is that if we go all the way to the right, this is a very low poly cutout, but there was no intent for you to actually try and make something more of it, right? There was not something where it's like, that doesn't look good. I'm going to make a different tileable texture. Let's say make a different tileable texture. And then maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to add like a bit of extra geometry so that I can make this cut look really, really good. And that's going to be filled with like my new tileable texture that is going to have like a slightly different tone so that we can actually make it look better, right? And then you can talk about like maybe doing decals and all that kind of stuff, because you can then do the smart thing or like a smart thing where you have that transition from your broken material going into a tradition where like there's a crack here. That is a decal, right? So you're transitioning from a tileable texture to a decal that is then projected onto like the surface, right? But that makes it feel like this whole thing is going to be way more detailed than it currently is, right? Yeah, those details, you know, like doing additional layers of like texture blending, making sure that like contextual blending is appropriate and is used where appropriate, which means that if you have leaks on edges of surfaces, that's going to be nice, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Oh, didn't want to do that. Cool. But yeah, I think overall, like I said, the initial image, stunning, right? But the image also needs to hold up under scrutiny, and I think that's where you're going to need to put in like a little bit more work. Because some elements are really, really strong, and then other elements need like a little bit more work, right? Yeah. I like where this is going though. Like, really impressed. You know, second year, I mean, this is end of first year, I'm assuming, right? So end of first year. So this is already showcasing like a lot of promise. You finished this in only 3 weeks. Made me believe that I can work fast and efficient. Well, yeah, so this is the thing, right? Like, you learned a valuable lesson here that you can work really quickly. And I think you focus so much on speed that we now need to turn the dial just a little slightly back. And focus on maybe, okay, how can we balance that speed that you have and then bring it up to the next standard by maybe adding like 2 weeks, right? Because if this is the result of like 3 weeks, the only thing that I'm wondering is like, man, I wish you had 2 weeks more, you know, really put the details on it. Oh, yeah. I agree 100%. Didn't have a lot of time making this, so focus more on the big picture than the smaller details. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, you know, and that's why I'm saying, like, for the future, you know, focus on just adding like more details to, focus on adding like a little bit more details to like the areas that are like really in your face. Because that's the thing, right? Like, the reason why I'm so specific about this is because, first of all, no one's going to read the description, right? You just have to assume that. So they don't know that you only spent 3 weeks on it. And to a certain degree, it doesn't matter. Let me make a parallel, right? And this might sound ridiculous, but I think the sort of thinking kind of applies here as well. When let's say when CD Projekt Red pushed out like Cyberpunk 2077 on the PlayStation 4, they could have also said like, yeah, but we've only spent like 4 years on it, right? I mean, I don't know how long they worked on it, but that's sort of the same kind of thinking, right? Because immediately the thing here is like, doesn't matter though, right? it came out like looking. I mean, this is actually a bad example because I think your work actually looks better than Cyberpunk. So take that with a bunch of credit, right? But the thinking behind it is like, oh, I still wanted to see you put in more, right? Anyway, enough bashing that point. Let's have a look at the other stuff that you did. And I think this is a great example, right? I know that you worked a lot on the bell itself, and the bell is filled with details. You've done a really good job of like trying to be like really smart with all the stuff that you've done, right? Worked really smart, really showcasing like the intent and like all the individual sculpt. This stuff is awesome, right? So I think you've done a good job on it. Still, I know, again, this is where the team challenge also suffers from the same thing. It's very much speed focused. I want to see a bit more. Well, you kind of have it here. Let me scoot back. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, so you have the wireframes. Let's have a look at this. Got the wireframes, got the base color. Render. Okay, RGB masking. Cool. Oh, hold on. Edge wear, moisture damage, and dirt. Nice. Okay, that's awesome. I think this approach, yeah, really, really good. I would put more emphasis on like the RGB masking, right, and make it more weathered and like broken up that way. Small point. But I think, yeah, showcasing more in this sort of style where you focus, you temper your speed and you focus more on this kind of stuff, right? Where you have that like impressive like focal point for your next scene, right? Could be like really good to showcase. Because again, like this applies to everyone, right? I look at your portfolio as like a list of checkboxes. So you've proven to me that you can work fast. You've proven to me that you have a real interest of environments, which is awesome, right? Now we just need to see that we can balance that ability to work within those like strict limitations of trying to always build at scale, right? With also a focus on attention to detail. Because we need to build systems that work at scale, but also look detailed. Yeah, great stuff though. Great stuff. Showcase more of like the tools that you're building behind it, right? Like if you make like really smart master materials, showcase them off as well. And yeah. Yeah, and I know that you do have time for like your portfolio projects and all that kind of stuff, right? I think building something towards like the scope that you've already done, you've been very smart with the concepts that you pick and how much reusability and, you know, all the smart stuff that you've done already. So keep building scenes towards this kind of scope and size, but really focus the attention on like all the details, because that is where you're gonna really break into why AAA would be interested in you, right? Awesome. But yeah, great stuff though, man. Great stuff. Second year student. Really awesome to see your work. I would also consider this doesn't have to happen now, right? Because you still have time, you're still working on your portfolio, you're still waiting to apply. Once you have like all your images and all your projects on your portfolio, really consider scraping the bottom of the barrel and being very, very aggressive with what you think doesn't hold up anymore, right? I know that you're already doing that because remember, all the way in the beginning, we saw that one post on LinkedIn that is no longer in your ArtStation. So there must be a reason why that is gone. So keep that spirit alive and do that whenever you have your full portfolio ready. So let's have a look. Current hireability. Let's have a think about this. Because I think I would be impressed by just your sheer attention, or like your sheer drive to make like impressive environments, right? And that is like really good initial impact. So that's going to score you a lot of points. And I think you're also scoring some points with your team challenge work because you're using like RGB masking, or not even RGB masking, right? But just the way that you use like your trim sheet in combination with your RGB masking is showcasing like a real understanding of industry workflows. Where, for example, something like this doesn't. It kind of feels like, if we go to the breakdown here again, right? This wouldn't be AAA ready. The stuff that you're using on the Bell, that feels AAA ready and aligned with the industry, right? So those explorations of those workflows would be really good. And that's something that you have to take into like the next project as well. So hireability, pretty good. Who would say it? I don't want to put too much stock into the team challenge. If I look through my recruiter hat, right? If I look at my recruiter hat, and how do I look through a hat? What the hell? I look through my recruiter glasses, and I look at the team challenge. I would also make the assumption that if you're working within a team, there might be someone in that team that is more experienced than you, teaching you how to do stuff, or like at least not teaching you, but like helping you, right? Because I know how the team challenges work. I know that sometimes happens, but if we would have to assume that if you're, because right now I see that you're not using all the right approaches when it comes to your work, but then in your latest thing, I see that you are. I kind of have to make the assumption at this point that probably someone helped you with that, or that we've just seen a skill that you've not displayed in your other pieces, right? But I'm probably going to make the safe assumption and go for number one, right? So that means that your hireability on that point is going to suffer a little bit. Let me also make some notes here. Great picks for scenes in terms of scope and scale. And then what else have I thought about this point? Yeah. But this is when it's ready, right? We're not looking at like removing or like really tweaking the portfolio now. I would just focus all the work on like adding more stuff to it, and then we can tweak and be very picky all the way at the end, right before you go into like application mode, or maybe somewhere before that, right? So that if you get into like, let's say the year or like the last couple of months, that you can already kind of get some traction by like trying to share stuff. Missing some thorough breakdowns, right? And some workflows used here are more focused on speed. Rather than industry workflows at the moment, right? Apart from the Bell, right? But again, because it's a team challenge, we can't really take that into account. Cool presentation. We'll get into your question in just a little bit, Senna. We'll have that at the end. Presentation. I think your presentation is pretty good, right? Your presentation, your lighting, the way that you present your work, really well done. I don't really think that there's too much to complain about there. You have like breaking up things with banners and all that kind of stuff, which adds a lot. I think your breakdowns, again, I mentioned this before, can be improved a lot because I'm missing a lot of information there, right? But I think the presentation itself is really, really good. Artistry, we're going to go for something... It's interesting. We're going to go for something... Let's say a 6, and then techniques currently would be lower. The reason for that being is I know that you can compose an image really well. I know that you can do the lighting. You know how to present a scene. You know how to pick a scene. So that's all hinting at like some good internal artistic convictions, right? So that's already really promising. Yeah, but then the techniques, The ones that you showed are just not appropriate yet. And again, team challenge stuff. We can't really rely on that yet, right? I know that you're working on this. I know that your last year and like, you know, the next years that you're going to be working in DIA, you're going to improve a lot on this. You're going to have more time to do like the bigger projects and the more impressive stuff, right? So this is something that I would focus on. Cool. Yeah. But yeah, congratulations though. I mean, I'm pretty picky, pretty harsh with this stuff, right? But already having like an average score of 5.25 in your second year of uni is a really good position to be in, you know? So you can be proud of yourself already. There's some stuff to improve here for sure, but I think you're on a freaking awesome track, man. Like, keep at it, keep pushing yourself, and you're going to be in a really good position. Cool. You did have a question though, so let me switch back to the camera. Exactly what I'll be doing for the next piece. Sculpting is new to me, and I feel like I can finally push that high quality realism now. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sculpting by itself, right? It can also be just subdivision modeling or how to build more detailed assets with like trim sheets, or, you know, sculpting is one aspect. If you gravitate toward, I mean, it's just a tool, right? But that's a good one. So yeah, I'm curious to see where you're gonna go with that. And then your question is, you think I'm better of getting rid of the Japanese scene instead of updating the breakdown? That is a good question. I think with the... I think here's an annoying spot that you put yourself in, right? I think that if you're gonna add a lot of breakdowns to it, to most of your scenes, right, apart from the team challenge, I think what you're gonna do is you're gonna put extra emphasis on the things that you don't know yet, which is normal, right? But especially with the Japanese scene, if you then do like additional... How would I approach that? Yeah. God, that's a difficult one. I think yes, you might be better off getting rid of the Japanese scene. But I wouldn't do that now, right? I would do that when you have like 1 or 2 more environments in your portfolio and they can properly replace that scene. Because with the trajectory that you're on right now, I wouldn't remove stuff. I would just keep building stuff. And then once you have like your final quote unquote portfolio that you're going to use to like apply to the industry, I would then make sure that like anything you deem is like not ready to be shown, just remove it from that. And I think the Japanese scene might be a good candidate for that. I would honestly, with the Japanese scene, you could actually remake the main building, make sure that it uses the right workflows, change nothing about the scene, and it can look like way better than it done before. So that would also be a good option there as well. Because yeah, the issue is like if you have not used proper workflows and then you add additional breakdowns to portfolio projects like that, you're basically going to be calling yourself out, right? Which is not necessarily what you want to be doing. Yeah. But yeah, again, great stuff, Senna. I will also add your portfolio here. So for people in the chat or viewing on YouTube later, go check Senna's work, because I think he has a fantastic computer in front of him. So yeah, give him a follow. Mohammed is saying, hi all. Hello, Mohammed. Good to see you. Megfal is asking, what's the general notice period that studios expect when you start a new job? You mean as in like, hey, I signed a contract and like what is the expected like time that you'll be joining? Because that kind of depends on where the studio is, right? Like for example, when I accepted a job at Playgrounds moving to the UK, it took a really long time because visa requirements, moving and all that kind of stuff, right? Sene is saying, I don't want to get trapped into revisiting pieces though. I've done that for the portfolio course and it takes so much time for that return you get. Yeah. I mean, 100% right? Like for every suggestion that I make, and this is a very good point, right? For every suggestion that I make for your portfolio, I want people to do their own cost benefit analysis because you have a deep understanding of what is missing or broken or needs to be adjusted about that piece, right? And sometimes you just come to the conclusion that it's probably going to be easier to make something new than to revisit something old. Because there's also one big aspect about that I can't tell is how you feel about that work. Because let's say about this Japanese environment, right? If you are sick and tired of it, telling you to then go back and like do more work on it is just not going to work. It's just not going to work. So yeah, if that's what you feel, man, don't do it. Just make new stuff. That is, I've always felt similar when it comes to my stuff. I would always be moving forward. I felt like revisiting old pieces was just like revisiting the past. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to keep moving forward. I don't care about it. I would rather have new pieces and then remove old pieces rather than keep like a very similar portfolio that has like, you know, new things or like tweaks on it. McFadden saying, I'm assuming it's at least a month usually, since that's a common notice period to quit a current job. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, if you're switching jobs, yeah. Usually it just depends on the current notice period you have, right? I've had, yeah, most of mine have probably been like a month. Yeah. But I have done some weird moves when it comes to my career decisions that are not advisable to anyone else. So yeah. For example, quitting a job when you don't have another job lined up, you know, that seems to be a recurring pattern that I do. Don't advise that. Don't advise that at all. Apartments are usually 3 months though, which is annoying. Yeah. Oh yeah, boy. I know it. There's a lot of finessing that you have to do. There's also a couple of apartments that I had to pay like an extra month for, even though we just changed like one day or 1 week. You know, they were like, "Well, can't change it. You need to pay for an extra month." Then it's just like, fuck. Conceptual Vision is saying I've done the same thing, like just quitting a job. It's quitting a job with no prospects. It's horrible. Well. Yeah, I sacrifice safety for passion. Yeah, the thing that I keep latching onto is that I have always prioritized outside work compared to inside studio work, right? So that means that I was always ready to fully capture the next thing that came around, right? So in that case, I don't want to say lucky. I worked hard to achieve that, right? I was in a position where I could almost make that decision and kind of be okay with that decision, right? Because I always had like, what I always tried to do is whenever that moment came around, I would then build a timeline around that moment coming around, right? So I would be more active on social media. I would be posting regular updates. I would be, in this case, it would be more active, would be on Extend or anything like that, right? Depending on what the goal is, I would then do more stuff towards that goal. By the time that I would actually quit, people had already built up an expectation of me posting like on the regular and then just being like, hey, I'm looking for a job. And then people were like, oh, I didn't know you're looking for a job. Okay, let me give you a repost kind of thing, you know? So there's a lot of, if you can kind of plan around it, I think it makes a lot more sense to then just like quit out of the blue, you know, when like the time comes. But if you don't have anything built up, you're not working on like a personal project that's nearly finished, you don't have like an up-to-date portfolio, oh my God, don't do it. Just take the hit, keep working at your company, you know, and then try to build up a portfolio over that time. Conceptual Vision is saying I always ended up with a couple of jobs I didn't want, which took me away from what I aimed for. However, I always learned. Yeah. I think and this is something that I struggle with as well, is you have to be able to see the positives. Because sometimes you just tend to focus on the negatives, you know? Probably will be stuck in the factory for at least a while unless something unexpected happens. Yeah, and I mean, there's also nothing necessarily wrong with it, right? I know that's not ideal, but I think it's also good that you have something that is completely out of art so that you can focus on art and you can kind of... You said it last time, right, McFal? Where you were like really excited to make art. Because here's also another trap that can happen, right? I've seen a lot of people throughout my career and throughout my like advice sessions where they took a job in art because that would put them closer to art, even though they now had to spend like 8 hours doing art and then 4 hours doing art because they still wanted to do something different in art, right? Which for a lot of people is like, dude, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm already spending like 8 hours of my day doing art, and then I have to come home and do different art, but it's still art though. Whereas I always liked when I was doing like factory work and like, I don't know, the more mundane, boring jobs, whatever you want to call them, right? I love that they were like physically intensive because I was kind of sparing my brain and then coming home and just being able to like sit down, do nothing, and just let my brain just like go fucking mental, you know? And that's what I loved about it. Yeah, factory job is the complete opposite of art. Yeah. The stuff that I had to do when I was doing like student jobs and all that kind of stuff was very, very, very boring, very bog standard. Like, oh, you just zone out with audiobooks? We couldn't have any electronic devices, so there was no audiobooks. There were moments where I had to spend my entire shift, like 8 hours, just reading like 3 papers. Over and over again. Mind-numbing, boring shit. But you come home and oh my god, you have a fucking fire under your ass because you want to make art. That's the awesome thing about it. Thanks for the feedback. Sad I was a bit late, but I'll rewatch it for sure. Hey, thank you, Senna. And happy to help, man. My ears go crazy with all the light noses everywhere without them. Oh yeah. I had to work into like some conditions where it was like really loud as well, with like ear protection, all that kind of stuff, in like full protective suiting. Ugh. I think it's a double-edged sword. I work factory jobs, and depending on the place I work. I either have the time to do what I want or no energy to even open a project. Yeah, I think it's also... I mean, you just have to accept that there's going to be moments where you don't want to work, right? That is fine. I think you also have to build up a muscle of just like motivating yourself to kind of take the first step, and then usually automation kind of takes over, you know? That's why I keep going back to the all-time recommendation. Every day, half an hour. Just do half an hour of work. And sometimes you have days that just suck, and you just do half an hour, and then you do whatever you want, right? But there's also going to be days where you thought the day was going to suck. You come home, you spend half an hour, you get into the zone, and you're busy for 3 hours, right? So you kind of need to build a routine about like making that happen more, right? But it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, same thing here, right? If you wanna really achieve something, you'll just have to go for it. You know, there's no balance. When I hear people talking about like balance between like, you know, like work-life balance, all that kind of stuff, I think if you want to really go for something, I think balance has to go out the window. I think balance to a lot of people means something completely different, right? For me, balance means, especially in the last couple of months, right? Like thinking about my work schedule is crazy. Get up at 8, walk the dog for an hour, work from like 9 to 5, take a break for like lunch, like half an hour, work from like 9 to 5, take a break, do some cooking, start work at 7 until 12, play an hour or like half an hour games, then go to sleep, and then wake up at like 8 again next day, right? And then some days Oh my god, some days where you have to like you have a very intensive day at work and then you have to do a stream for 4 hours afterwards. That's not easy. It's not easy. But it is worth it though, right? And that's the thing. That's the thing that keeps me moving forward. It's like I'm building my new house, so to say, like brick by brick, you know, and every time I do a little bit of work, I put in another brick. And that's how I see it. And over time, like all the stuff that we built with Beyond Extent, that is just me putting a single brick in place. That's all it is. There's nothing really mental about it, or there's nothing like really impressive about it, I feel. It's just consistency. Slow consistency. Brick by brick. And sometimes, yeah, with Wednesday it's mental, right? Because that's always my day where I get no time or almost no time to do anything myself. But I made my own schedule, right? So I gotta lie in the bed that I made for myself. But yeah. All right. I do need to head on out because talking about a schedule, I want to do some more work on the website. I got some bugs to fix. But I appreciate you all being here. Again, go check out Senna and Jan's work. Sorry, I forgot your name, Jan, already. But go check out their work. Yes. Beyond Extent mug. I want to make more of them. I need some replacements. Maybe some merch. Who knows? But anyway, I'm going to head on out. I'm going to do some chores. Going to do some other stuff. Go work on the website. But I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you for all the thoughtful questions and discussions. I really appreciate all your time. And you know what to do. Go check out a fancy new website. Go check that out. Yeah, because we spend a lot of time. I think it looks really snazzy. So go check it out. Become a member. Do all that good stuff. And then last thing for Mikval, because you were asking, is that a Forza forklift in the background? No, it's not. I think it's supposed to be a gas tank. But it is a Forza one, yeah. All right, people. I'm out. Take care. Have a good weekend.